So I want you to imagine that your toddler is just flat out refusing to put their shoes on.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. And you are like 10 minutes late for work. The stakes are getting higher by the second.
Yeah, the panic is setting in.
Exactly. So you try bribing them with a snack in the car. You threaten to leave without them. You try to turn the entire ordeal into, a race, a game, literally anything to get those Velcro straps secured.
Right.
But whether you realize it or not, in that sweaty, stressful moment in your hallway, you're actually executing a high-stakes, high-pressure sales pitch.
Yes, you absolutely are.
And according to the text we are exploring today, if you lose that pitch, if you walk out the door defeated and late, you are paying a very real, tangible price for failing to close the deal.
It really reframes the entire morning routine, doesn't it? I mean, when we stop looking at those interactions as just parenting struggles or, office friction, and we start looking at them as active negotiations, the underlying mechanics of human behavior just become completely exposed.
Yeah, and that exposure is exactly what we're after today. So today we are taking a deep dive into Chapter 1 of Grant Cardone's foundational text, Sell or Be Sold.
Specifically exploring this core concept that selling is a way of life.
Right. You are going to learn why persuasion isn't just, a job title relegated to some cubicle somewhere, but a fundamental prerequisite for your daily survival.
Absolutely.
We're going to unpack why mastering this single, deeply misunderstood skill is really the ultimate shortcut to getting your way in business, entrepreneurship, and even in your personal relationships.
Yeah, because we are essentially stripping the word sales of all its cultural baggage today.
I mean, we really have to.
Right. We have to wipe the slate completely clean and just look at the raw physics of how human beings transmit ideas, desires, and boundaries.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start right there with the cultural baggage.
Sure,
Because,
sure.
I mean, if I walk up to someone on the street and say the word salesperson, their brain immediately conjures up a very specific archetype.
Oh, 100%. It's usually a guy in a poorly fitted suit on a used car lot.
Exactly. Or like someone interrupting your dinner with a cold call, or just this barrage of high-pressure, borderline manipulative tactics.
Right, right.
But Cardone's text argues that this traditional definition is completely backwards.
It is backwards, and it's backwards because it conflates a really specific, often poorly executed commercial transaction with what is actually a universal human behavior.
So how does he redefine it?
Well, the text actually takes us straight to the dictionary to clear this up.
Hmm.
If you look at the Merriam-Webster definition provided in the book, selling is simply defined as the action of persuading or influencing another to a course of action or to the acceptance of something.
Okay, notice what is completely absent from that definition.
Right, there is no mention of money.
None. There's no mention of a cash register. There's no signed contract, no quota, no commission check.
Exactly, zero financial parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah. The author argues that selling is absolutely not limited to the exchange of physical goods or services for currency. The scope is universally human.
So it's basically everything.
Pretty much. I mean, it includes debating a political point with a friend, navigating a tense disagreement with your coworkers.
Or convincing someone to take a chance and go out on a date with you.
Yes. Or persuading a notoriously conservative bank underwriter to give you a loan for your first house. The fundamental premise established in Chapter 1 is that in every single exchange of ideas, a sale is made.
Wait, every single exchange?
Every single one. There are no neutral interactions. Either you are getting your way or the other person is getting theirs.
Okay, I need to hit pause right there and push back on that framework just a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if I adopt the mindset that absolutely every interaction is this zero-sum negotiation where someone is actively being sold, I mean, that sounds incredibly exhausting.
I get that.
If I'm just chatting with my neighbor over the fence about the weather, one of us is closing the other, it feels a little, I don't know, paranoid to view human connection through such a transactional, combative lens.
I understand why it feels that way. But let's dissect the mechanics of what is actually happening when you talk to your neighbor. The author isn't suggesting you adopt an aggressive, combative posture.
Okay.
He's just asking you to acknowledge reality. Even in a seemingly benign conversation about the weather, influence is being exchanged.
How so?
Well, if your neighbor complains that it's too hot and the neighborhood is going downhill, and you walk away from that fence feeling slightly more pessimistic about your day.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they just sold you their mood. They successfully influenced your internal state.
Huh. So it is less about conscious manipulation and more about, like, the invisible physics of communication.
Think of it like gravity.
Yeah.
You don't have to walk around all day consciously hyperfixating on gravity. But if you delude yourself into believing gravity doesn't exist, you're going to step off a ledge and fall.
That's a great point.
The same goes for influence. Human beings are constantly transmitting ideas and establishing boundaries. To ignore the fact that you are constantly influencing outcomes, or being influenced by them, is to essentially surrender your agency.
You're just leaving your life up to the whims of the people around you who are actively persuading.
Exactly.
You know, it's almost like living without an understanding of persuasion is like trying to drive a manual transmission car by just mashing the gas pedal and hoping the gears figure themselves out.
Yes, that is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
You might roll forward down a hill with the flow of traffic, but the moment you hit an incline like needing to ask for a raise or trying to save a failing marriage or getting that toddler into their shoes, you stall out entirely because you don't understand how the clutch actually works.
Right. You don't know how to engage the gears of human motivation.
Yeah.
And the stakes for ignoring this clutch, for ignoring this reality, are incredibly high. The text points out a really fascinating misconception that plagues the business world.
Let's hear it.
If you ask 100 economists or business analysts what the #1 reason a startup or an individual enterprise fails is, what do you think the standard answer is?
Oh, undercapitalization. Like, they ran out of money, they didn't have enough runway, they couldn't secure Series B funding. I mean, it's always about the cash flow, right?
Right. But the author states that this is a fundamental misdiagnosis of the disease.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Businesses do not fail, first and foremost, because they run out of money. They fail because their founders failed to sell their ideas quickly enough and in great enough quantities.
So they ran out of persuasion long before they ran out of capital.
Precisely.
Let's drill into the mechanics of that because, I mean, on a spreadsheet, if revenue doesn't cover expenses, the business dies. It just looks like a math problem.
It manifests as a math problem, but the root cause is behavioral. Let's say we have a brilliant software engineer who builds a revolutionary productivity app in his garage.
Okay, classic Silicon Valley story.
Right. And the code is flawless.
Yeah.
The UI is gorgeous. It is objectively better than anything on the market.
Right.
But if that engineer refuses to embrace the role of a salesperson, if he cannot persuade venture capitalists to fund his vision, if he cannot convince top-tier developers to leave their secure jobs at Google to come work for his risky startup,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and if he cannot influence the general public to change their habits and download his app, that brilliant product dies in the garage.
Meanwhile, a competitor with an inferior, buggy app, but a founder who is a master of persuasion, gets the funding, secures the talent, and completely dominates the market share.
Exactly. No business owner can build a sustainable enterprise without understanding this critical element. A brilliant idea that cannot be sold is, by definition, a dead idea.
Wow.
If you can sell the vision, the capital will inevitably follow. Investors want to give their money to people who can move markets. But if you can't sell the idea, all the seed capital in the world will eventually dry up because the engine of influence just isn't running.
You know, the book uses a very concrete, almost primal analogy to illustrate just how deeply wired we are to try and influence outcomes even when we pretend we aren't.
Oh, the golfer analogy.
Yes, the 6-foot putt. It perfectly captures human psychology.
It really does. Break it down for us.
Okay, so picture a golfer on the green facing a crucial 6-foot putt for the tournament. He lines up the shot, he taps the ball, and the ball begins rolling toward the hole.
Right.
At this exact moment, physics has completely taken over. The velocity and the trajectory are locked in. The golfer has absolutely zero physical control over that ball anymore. But what does he do?
He contorts his body. He leans heavily to the left. He waves his hands in the air.
Yes. He talks to the ball, yelling, "Get in the hole." He might even whisper a silent prayer.
He's using every ounce of his being to somehow persuade, influence, or coax that inanimate object to drop into the cup.
And we all do this. If you go to a bowling alley, you see people throw a 16-pound ball down the lane, and then they stand there, twisting their torso, trying to invisibly steer the ball away from the gutter from 40 feet away.
We can't forget the opponent in the golfer analogy either. While the first golfer is leaning and praying for the ball to go in, his opponent is standing on the opposite side of the green, perfectly silent, intensely willing the ball to miss.
The mechanics of this are so fascinating because why do we do this? It is incredibly irrational. We know we can't use telekinesis to move a golf ball.
You do it because we are inherently biologically wired to try and tip the scales of reality in our favor. We do not want to trust our survival or our success to passive fate.
Right.
Evolutionary psychology tells us that passive organisms do not survive. We were built to exert influence over our environment. The problem, as the author argues, is that most adults stop at the hoping and leaning phase.
Oh, that's sad but true. They wish for a promotion, they hope their partner will understand their needs, they cross their fingers that their business will survive.
Yeah, they rely on the equivalent of leaning at a bowling alley.
And the people who actually succeed are the ones who upgrade from magical thinking to kinetic action. They stop wishing for an outcome and actively learn the mechanics of how to persuade, negotiate, and close.
So the practical application for you, the listener, is immediate.
Yeah.
You must take an unvarnished inventory of your day.
Yeah.
From the moment you wake up and negotiate with the traffic on the freeway so you can safely merge, to the moment you convince your team to adopt a new workflow, you need to recognize that you are already operating as a salesperson.
The fact that your job title says project manager or graphic designer instead of sales executive is just a corporate technicality.
Exactly. Acknowledging your role is step one, because once you admit that you are already behind the wheel of this manual transmission car, you can start intentionally learning how to use the clutch, rather than just grinding the gears and wondering why your life feels so bumpy.
But this brings up a huge conceptual hurdle for me. If we are constantly selling all day long, if I am putting in the effort to negotiate with my toddler, my spouse, my boss, and the freeway traffic, what is the ROI?
What do you mean?
Well, in a standard sales job, I get a physical commission check. If I am doing all this invisible labor all day, what am I getting paid?
This brings us to the author's radical redefinition of the commission. We are deeply conditioned by a capitalist framework to view a commission strictly as a percentage of financial currency paid out after a commercial transaction.
Right.
But the text shatters this limitation. A commission is simply the payout for a successful persuasion. Therefore, every single time you get your way in life, you have just been paid a commission.
So getting the toddler into their shoes and getting to work on time, that lack of a morning meltdown is a commission.
Exactly. Non-monetary commissions are the actual currency of a fulfilled life. When you deliver a presentation and receive genuine recognition for a job well done, that elevated status is a commission.
Okay, I see.
When you move to a new city and successfully persuade a group of strangers to invite you into their social circle, those new friendships are an incredible commission.
Oh.
Gaining the necessary votes for a passion project at the office, feeling secure in your home, achieving a baseline of daily happiness, these are not random lottery winnings. These are commissions earned by someone's intentional hard work at selling others and themselves on a better way of operating.
I want to talk about the people who actively resist this idea. Because you hear people proudly declare all the time, almost as a badge of honor, oh, I could never do sales. I am not built for that. I could never work on commission because I need the safety of my guaranteed salary.
Oh, the psychological irony of that statement is profound.
It really is, because the author makes a blistering point here. There are no guarantees in life. Absolutely everything, down to the molecular level of our society, is a commission. Let's look at that person who feels so safe with their guaranteed salary.
They are living under an illusion. How did they get that salary in the first place? They had to polish a resume, sit in an interview room, and successfully sell a hiring manager on the belief that they were more valuable than the 50 other applicants.
Right. They had to close a deal.
Yes. And the selling doesn't stop once they sign the W-2.
Not at all.
Every single day they walk into that office, they have to continue to sell their value to their superiors to avoid getting laid off. And zooming out even further, if the company they work for fails to successfully sell its products or services to the broader market, revenue stops, the company folds, and that guaranteed salary vanishes into thin air.
So the non-commissioned life is a complete myth.
It's a total myth.
You know, this framework gets even more intense when the book applies it to areas of life that we consider deeply personal, almost sacred, like our physical health and our romantic relationships.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time equating the gym or my marriage with a sales floor. It feels like it strips the humanity out of it, you know?
That is a very common resistance point. But let's look at the mechanics, not the vocabulary. Let's take health. You do not magically inherit permanent good health. It is not a guaranteed right.
Sadly, no.
Health is a biological commission. It is the physical payout you receive for successfully selling yourself on a daily basis on the necessity of action.
Wait, I'm thinking about this differently now. When my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. for the gym, my brain is actively pitching me a counteroffer.
Yes, exactly.
My brain is saying, it's cold outside, you worked hard yesterday, the bed is warm, just hit snooze, you deserve the rest. My own mind is executing a highly persuasive sales pitch designed to keep me comfortable.
And in that moment, you are both the buyer and the seller. You have to outpitch your own brain. You have to counter those objections with a stronger vision of your future fitness, your longevity, or your energy levels.
And if my counter pitch fails?
If it fails, you buy the excuse, you stay in bed, and you do not earn the commission of health that day. It is a daily internal negotiation.
Okay, I buy the health argument. That makes sense. But then there's love. The book explicitly calls love the ultimate commission.
It does.
I have to push back here. Viewing love as a commission sounds like a B2B sauce contract. It just strips all the romance, the altruism, and the unconditional nature out of human connection. Are we really supposed to view our spouses as clients?
It sounds unromantic only if you view selling as a manipulative extraction of value. But if we stick to the definition of selling as influencing someone toward a better outcome, the mechanics of a romantic relationship align perfectly. Let's break it down behaviorally.
Okay.
True love isn't just handed to you by the universe. Initially, you have to persuade another human being to take an interest in you. You have to present your best self, showcase your values, and essentially sell them on the idea that you are a trustworthy partner to invest their time and emotional energy into.
That's the courting phase, the initial acquisition, if we're using the terminology.
Right. But where most relationships fail is that people think the sale is final once the wedding ring is on or the commitment is made. They stop servicing the account.
Oh, wow. That is a brutal but accurate way to phrase it. Stop servicing the account.
It is the reality of behavioral psychology. A thriving relationship requires continuous mutual selling. You have to consistently figure out what makes your partner happy, what makes them feel secure, and you have to actively produce those conditions.
Right.
You are constantly selling them on the reality that choosing you was and continues to be the best decision of their life.
And if you stop doing that?
If you start producing, if you stop putting in the effort to persuade them of your love through your actions, the relationship degrades. The neurochemical bonds of trust and affection begin to weaken. And eventually, the commission of love disappears.
Wow.
The author is arguing that romanticizing a relationship to the point where you believe it requires zero ongoing effort, zero ongoing persuasion, is a recipe for divorce.
I see the logic now. It isn't about treating your partner like a transaction. It's about taking extreme ownership of the effort required to maintain a connection. You can't just coast on a 10-year-old promise.
Exactly.
Speaking of relentless effort, we have to talk about the book's observation regarding children. I was laughing out loud reading this section because the author notes that kids are objectively the absolute best salespeople on the planet.
They are masterful operators, honestly.
If you want to witness a masterclass in closing a complex deal, watch a 6-year-old who has decided they want a highly specific toy at the grocery store, or, a teenager who wants their curfew extended. The book points out that they are passionate, they are relentless, and they are completely unbothered by rejection.
Let's analyze how they do this because the mechanics are brilliant. Adults suffer from what psychologists call ego depletion and a fear of social rejection. If an adult asks for something and is told no, they internalize it.
Right. Their ego's bruised.
Exactly. They feel shame, so they retreat and don't ask again.
But a child doesn't have that baggage.
None at all. To a child, the word no is not a personal indictment of their character. It is simply a temporary logistical obstacle. It is an objection to be overcome.
Right.
They use pattern interruption. They will ask nicely. If that fails, they will negotiate a trade-off. If that fails, they will leverage emotional pressure like crying or sulking. They systematically test different angles of persuasion, looking for the stress fracture in the parent's resolve.
And they wear down the parent's ego depletion until the parent finally says, fine, just take the toy so we can leave. The child successfully closes the deal and gets their commission.
And this raises a profound psychological question. If human beings are born with this natural, intuitive genius for selling and negotiation, why do adults struggle with it so immensely? Why do we lose this superpower?
Because at some point between childhood and adulthood, society beats it out of us. We are taught that asking too many questions is annoying. We are taught that being persistent is rude. We are taught that sales is a sleazy, manipulative thing that only bad people do.
We are conditioned to accept our lot in life rather than negotiate for a better one.
So, bringing this directly to you, the listener, when you look at your life, And you feel a deep sense of frustration because you aren't getting the commissions you want, whether that is a lack of respect in board meetings, a lack of romance in your marriage, or a lack of physical fitness when you look in the mirror. You need to ask yourself a very pragmatic, uncomfortable question.
What am I failing to sell, and to whom?
Yes. Are you failing to sell your partner on your value because you've stopped trying? Are you failing to sell your boss on your contributions because you're afraid of appearing boastful? Or perhaps most insidiously, are you failing to sell yourself on the value of doing the hard, unglamorous work required to succeed?
It is a diagnostic tool for your entire life.
But if this framework is so empowering, if realizing that we are all on commission gives us the agency to actively construct our reality instead of being victims of circumstance, why do our stomachs still drop when someone calls us a salesperson? Where did we acquire this massive psychological block?
That brings us to one of the most critical concepts in Chapter 1, the trap of false data.
Let's define this clearly because it explains so much of our societal anxiety.
The author defines false data as information that is fundamentally not factual, but through sheer repetition, it becomes widely accepted as truth and is passed along from person to person without ever being critically inspected, verified, or challenged. It is essentially societal hearsay masquerading as wisdom.
And this false data is the primary culprit behind the negative stereotype of the salesperson. When the word sales is spoken, people immediately access a mental file filled with false data.
Right.
They picture a fast-talking, high-pressure, confrontational swindler who relies on trickery and deception to separate a fool from his money.
Which is a tragic foundational misconception. The text argues adamantly that those negative traits, the confrontation, the high pressure, the deception, are not the traits of a salesperson. They are the traits of a desperate, untrained amateur.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
A true professional, someone who has actually mastered the art of persuasion, never needs to use unpleasant tactics because they understand human nature. They understand how to align their offering with the buyer's genuine desires. But because the general public often only remembers the traumatic interactions they've had with incompetent amateurs, the entire profession and the skill of persuasion itself is branded with a scarlet letter.
Okay, I need to play devil's advocate again on this concept of false data because it sounds a lot like, just ignoring advice. If I want to make a major life decision and 5 different people in my life pull me aside and tell me it's a terrible idea, shouldn't I listen to them?
That's their point.
Isn't there an evolutionary advantage to listening to the warnings of the tribe? If everyone says there are lions in that cave, I shouldn't go in the cave, right?
Your instinct is correct from an evolutionary standpoint. Our brains are hardwired by evolution to prioritize negative information warnings about danger, because ignoring a warning about a lion meant death. This is called negative bias. We are genetically predisposed to listen to people who tell us not to do something risky.
Okay.
But in the modern world, this survival mechanism completely misfires.
How so?
Because the danger isn't a lion anymore. The danger is usually just a bruised ego or a financial setback. And more importantly, you have to ruthlessly evaluate the source of the data.
The source.
People have a natural, almost pathological tendency to form incredibly strong opinions, give definitive advice, and pass on terrifying myths about subjects in which they possess absolutely zero personal experience.
Like armchair experts, the people who know exactly how the quarterback should have thrown the ball, even though they haven't run a sprint in 20 years.
Precisely. The author shares several very specific, personal examples of this phenomenon to show how destructive it can be. Early in his career, he developed a strong interest in acquiring apartment buildings as an investment strategy.
And I'm guessing people had thoughts on that?
Oh, almost everyone in his social and professional circle explicitly warned him against it. They told him it was a terrible, risky idea. They vividly described the nightmares of 3.0 a.m. plumbing leaks, destructive tenants, and inevitable bankruptcy.
And let me guess. How many of those people giving the impassioned advice actually owned an apartment building?
Not a single one of them.
Unbelievable.
It was 100% false data. It was conventional wisdom generated by people who were terrified of risk. But the author ignored them and eventually acquired over 2,500 units.
Wow.
And his realization from actually doing the work, the renter isn't the problem. Not having renters is the problem.
Yeah.
A leaky faucet at 3.0 a.m. is just a minor predictable management issue that can be solved with a phone call to a plumber. It is an utterly minuscule inconvenience compared to the massive financial rewards of owning a cash-flowing asset. But people who knew absolutely nothing about the mechanics of real estate were using false data to try and keep him in his place.
They were trying to sell him on their own limitations. They were terrified of the venture, so they tried to persuade him to be terrified too. And the book mentions he ran into the exact same wall of false data when he decided to start his own business, right?
Yes, the entire subject of money and entrepreneurship is just a minefield of false data. When he was launching his first enterprise, the chorus of warnings started again. Everyone told him how incredibly difficult it would be, how risky it was to leave a stable job, and how statistically few businesses actually survive their first 5 years.
And again, none of these advisors had ever built a company.
Zero entrepreneurial experience among them. They were entirely ignoring the massive success stories and hyper-focusing on the failures, projecting their own need for safety onto his ambition. He also shares a story about forming a business partnership.
Oh, right, the partnership.
He needed a partner for a new venture, and the immediate false data fed to him by multiple people was a blanket statement. Partnerships never work out. They always end in bitter lawsuits and disaster.
A completely absolute statement based on hearsay.
Yep. He ignored the warning, closed the partnership on a simple handshake, and that partnership lasted for almost 15 years and proved to be incredibly lucrative for both of them.
It is genuinely wild how easily we accept these societal rules without ever demanding evidence. The book uses a really fascinating example to highlight this psychological flaw, the urban legend of the ghost hitchhiker.
It is the perfect illustration of cognitive ease and narrative bias.
Right. So you have a guy at a party who will swear to you with intense conviction that his friend's cousin's sister disappeared on prom night 20 years ago, and now her ghost hitchhikes on a lonely stretch of road near the local cemetery.
Right.
He believes it completely, but if you stop him and ask for specific names, dates, police reports, or any verifiable proof, he immediately crumbles. He can't give you a single fact. Yet just moments prior, his brain was processing and broadcasting this total fabrication as an absolute, unshakable truth.
Because it's a good story.
Exactly. We hear a compelling story, our brain prefers the ease of accepting it over the friction of investigating it, and we repeat it as fact.
And we do the exact same thing with the concept of sales and persuasion. People who have never spent a single day operating as a professional salesperson pass on the false data, that it's too hard, that you have to be extroverted, that it's a sleazy profession, that it's not a real career, and that you can't rely on the income. They are literally passing along a ghost story.
Therefore, the listener's immediate action item here is to conduct a rigorous, unflinching audit of the advice you have been given about your career, your finances, or your life goals. Are you currently avoiding a specific path like taking a commission-based job, pitching a massive idea to investors, or launching a side hustle based entirely on the past opinions of people who never actually succeeded in that arena themselves?
You have to start checking the resume of the person feeding you the fear. If they haven't successfully navigated the territory, their map is useless to you.
So society feeds us this pervasive false data about sales, making us fear and avoid the very act of persuasion. And this societal phobia leads us directly to a massive, glaring blind spot in the very institutions that are supposedly designed to prepare us for the real world.
The education gap. This is where the text pivots into a very sharp critique of our formal systems.
Think about the sheer volume of time we spend in classrooms. We spend roughly 12 years in the grade school system and then another 4 to 6 years in college or university. That is 16 to 18 years of highly structured, formalized education.
Right. And yet, as the author rightfully points out, basic human persuasion, the psychology of negotiation, and the mechanics of closing a mutually beneficial agreement are almost entirely absent from every single curriculum.
It is a phenomenal, almost systemic oversight. Schools are incredibly efficient at teaching you how to memorize and regurgitate information. They teach you history, complex mathematics, and geographic boundaries.
Sure.
And while those disciplines are necessary for a well-rounded intellect, they do absolutely nothing to teach you how to actually survive, navigate, and advance your own interests in a competitive marketplace.
It's mind-boggling when you stop and look at it objectively. You can graduate with honors and know the entire periodic table of elements, but you step into an office and have absolutely no idea how to confidently structure an argument to ask for a 15% raise.
Right.
You can write a meticulously cited 20-page thesis on the socioeconomic impacts of the French Revolution, but you sit down at a dealership and get completely fleeced on the price of a car because you don't understand the mechanics of leverage. Why do you think that is? Why would an education system deliberately omit the most crucial survival skill?
Because the modern education system was largely designed during the Industrial Revolution to produce compliant factory workers, not persuasive leaders. They wanted people who could follow instructions, stay in line, and not negotiate their wages.
That historical context is vital. And the lingering result today is that it creates a workforce of people who are entirely reliant on academic records, GPA scores, and highly formatted resumes.
Yeah.
They falsely believe that those pieces of paper act as a magical guarantee for advancement in life. But the text is brutal in its clarity here. Those papers do not guarantee anything. The ability to communicate your value and convince others to take action is what actually dictates your upward mobility in the world.
I found the author's own hiring philosophy really revealing on this point. He runs massive, highly profitable companies, but he explicitly states that when he is interviewing candidates, he doesn't just look for the smartest person in the room or the one with the most prestigious Ivy League degree on their resume.
Because a piece of paper, no matter how prestigious, does not move products or inspire teams. He looks for the person who can actively persuade him, right there in the tension of the interview room, that they are capable of executing the job.
Right.
He looks for an applicant who exudes confidence, maintains a resilient attitude in the face of tough questions, and demonstrates the kinetic ability to get others to agree with them.
His logic is bulletproof. If an applicant cannot successfully sell themselves and their own skill set during an interview when their own livelihood is on the line, how on earth can they be expected to sell the company's vision, products, or services to a skeptical world?
If we dig into the underlying mechanics of this, it highlights the difference between static knowledge and kinetic knowledge.
Oh, expand on that. What do you mean?
A genius product design sitting on a whiteboard is static. It is utterly useless if it sits in a warehouse because no one can persuade a distributor to carry it. A world-changing cure for a disease is completely useless if the scientists cannot persuade investors to fund the clinical trials or persuade the public to trust the medicine.
So knowledge alone is static. Persuasion is what makes knowledge kinetic. It's what turns potential energy into real-world results.
Exactly. The people who can persuade are the ones who dictate the movement of capital, the adoption of technology, and the direction of society. That is why the author argues that a person's ability to persuade another is the only thing that will ultimately ensure their position in the marketplace, especially when economic conditions get tough.
He gives a fantastic, relatable example of this by talking about his own wife. He says she is one of the best salespeople he has ever met in his life, and she doesn't work a corporate sales job. She doesn't have a quota.
No, but she possesses all the traits of a master persuader. She is passionate about her family's well-being, she's incredibly persistent in the face of obstacles, and she actively, relentlessly negotiates with the world around her, whether that's dealing with contractors, schools, or service providers, to construct and protect a great life for their household.
Right.
She knows how to ethically get her way, and as a result, her entire family benefits from her ability to close those daily deals.
You know, once you open your eyes to this framework, you see these everyday survival sales happening all around you. Think about an aspiring actor who walks into a high-pressure audition room. They could have spent 10 years studying Shakespeare and possess more raw talent than anyone else in the city.
Sure.
But if they cannot project confidence, capture the room's attention, and sell the casting director on the belief that they are the only person uniquely capable of bringing that specific character to life, they are going to go right back to waiting tables.
The talent is the static product. The audition is the kinetic sale. Consider the administrative assistant who wants a promotion. They have to strategically compile evidence of their value and sell the boss on the reality that they contribute far more to the bottom line than just answering phones.
Yeah.
Even the mundane act of a driver trying to merge onto a crowded, fast-moving freeway is a negotiation. They have to use their vehicle's positioning, their speed, and their turn signals to successfully sell the other drivers on yielding space and letting them in.
It is everywhere, all the time. So the ultimate practical takeaway for you listening right now is this. You must start relying solely on your resume, your college degree, or your technical qualifications to carry you safely through life.
Right.
Those credentials are just table stakes. They might get you in the building, but they will not get you a seat at the head of the table. You have to start actively, intentionally practicing your communication and persuasion skills.
You need to study the mechanics of human influence, read books on negotiation, analyze how different people react to different phrasing, practice pitching your ideas to your friends. Because when the economy inevitably tightens, or when corporate restructuring happens, or when competition for resources gets fierce, It is your ability to sell your value, not the diploma hanging on your wall, that will actually safeguard your career and ensure your survival.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of psychological and strategic ground today. Let's bring all these threads together into a single, cohesive synthesis. Ultimately, what we learn from Chapter 1 of Sell or Be Sold is a complete foundational rewiring of how we view our daily interactions. We learn that selling is not a dirty word, it is not restricted to commercial transactions, and it certainly isn't a manipulative tactic that you do to someone.
Rather, it is the fundamental art of actively creating your life, rather than passively accepting whatever circumstances are handed to you.
Every single interaction is a negotiation of reality. Every reward you receive, be it financial wealth, robust physical health, a thriving career, or a deeply connected romantic relationship, is a commission that you earned for successfully selling your ideas, your discipline, and your value to the world.
Mastering this mindset isn't some optional elective course in the school of life. It is the absolute prerequisite for your survival and success.
The dichotomy is clear. If you are not actively selling your vision, you are inevitably being sold on someone else's. And the people who master the mechanics of this skill are the ones who ultimately design the world that the rest of us live in.
Now that you realize you are playing this high-stakes game of sales every single day, from the moment your alarm clock goes off to the moment you negotiate your kids into bed, you are probably wondering how to actually master the tactical execution of it.
Absolutely. You have accepted the reality of game. Now you need to learn the advanced mechanics of how to win it consistently. Join us next time as we dive into the subsequent chapters, where we will discover why professional salespeople literally make the global economy turn, how you can systematically separate the true professionals from the struggling amateurs, and how you can harness this predictive power to become absolutely indispensable in whatever field you choose to conquer.
It is going to be a crucial, deeply tactical continuation of this framework.
It really is. So until then, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, circling back to how we started this deep dive. Look at your life right now. Look at your career trajectory. Look at your bank account. Look at your relationships. And look at your physical health. If absolutely every one of us is entirely working on commission, and your current life is simply the payout for your past negotiations. Wait, let me rephrase that. If your current life is simply the payout for your past negotiations, what exactly have you been selling yourself on? And more importantly, starting tomorrow morning, is it time to completely change your pitch?
What if the single most critical skill for your survival, your income, and, your ability to get exactly what you want in life is the exact skill you were actively taught to ignore?
Oh man, the one they literally tell you to stay away from.
Right. I mean, think about it. You go to school for 15, maybe 20 years to learn how to be a quote-unquote professional.
Right, you put in the time.
Yeah, you memorize the formulas, you write the essays, you learn the exact dates of these historical battles. But then the moment you step out into the real world, the only thing that actually dictates your paycheck, your career trajectory, and frankly, your daily sanity is your ability to convince someone else to buy into your ideas.
It's just a phenomenal paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the very mechanism that determines our success is often the one we treat with the absolute most suspicion.
Oh, 100%.
We revere the architects, and the engineers, but we look sideways at the people who actually get the buildings funded.
Yes. And that tension right there, that tension between what we are taught to value and what actually drives the world is exactly what we are unpacking today.
It's going to be a good one.
It is. In this deep dive, we are pulling apart the core arguments from Chapter 2 of Grant Cardone's book, Sell or Be Sold.
A classic.
Truly.
Yep.
And the premise is right there in the chapter title. Salespeople make the world go round.
That's a bold claim right off the bat.
It really is.
Wow.
So we're going to explore why persuasion is basically this invisible engine powering the entire global economy.
Right.
We'll get into why our formal education system completely misses this vital skill, and why every single profession, I mean, whether you're wearing a lab coat or a hard hat, relies fundamentally on the ability to sell.
So our mission today really is to methodically dismantle that cultural stigma around selling.
Yeah, let's break it down.
Because if you look closely at the source material, the goal isn't just to make you, tolerate salespeople.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Exactly. It is to prove that embracing the identity of a salesperson in your own life is the ultimate shortcut to freedom and success.
I love that.
We basically need to shift from seeing persuasion as some sort of I don't know, necessary evil or sleazy tactic, and start recognizing it as the foundational skill of literally all human progress.
Okay, let's jump right into the deep end here then. Because the central claim made in this chapter is incredibly bold. Cardone says that salespeople are the invisible engine of literally everything.
Literally everything.
Everything. And he doesn't mean that in a cute, metaphorical way.
No, he is very literal about this.
Right. He makes the case that without salespeople, every industry on the planet would just stop cold tomorrow. And honestly, my first reaction to reading that was, come on, surely the inventors and the builders are the engine, right?
It's such a natural reaction. I mean, we're wired to think that way. But let's actually trace the physical reality of commerce the way the book lays it out.
Let's do it.
Let's use a tangible example. Imagine a company that manufactures a revolutionary new smartphone.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You have these brilliant software engineers writing the code in Silicon Valley.
Right.
You have massive factories in Asia sourcing all the raw materials, the cobalt, the lithium, the glass, the aluminum.
Well, logistics alone are insane.
Exactly. You have shipping companies with massive cargo vessels crossing the Pacific. You have warehouse workers, truck drivers, logistics coordinators, marketing teams designing billboards.
I mean, that's tens of thousands of jobs just for one single device.
Exactly. Tens of thousands of families relying on that process. But what happens if the person standing on the floor of the retail store or even the copywriter designing the final checkout page on the website fails to actually sell that phone to a consumer?
The phone just sits there.
It just sits there. And if it sits in the warehouse stops ordering from the factory.
Right. They don't need more inventory.
Exactly. And if the factory stops getting orders, what do? They shut down the assembly lines.
Wow.
When the assembly lines stop, the mining companies suddenly have absolutely no one to sell their lithium to.
The domino effect is crazy.
It's massive. The cargo ships sit idle in the harbor. The marketing agencies lose their retainers. The entire burden of that massive, sprawling economic ecosystem rests entirely on the final step.
Getting the product out of the company's hands and into the hands of a consumer.
Right. A consumer who's actually willing to part with their money.
So if the consumer doesn't swipe the credit card, the whole house of cards just collapses.
Complete collapse.
The factory workers don't get paid if the salesperson doesn't close. The book uses an analogy that really stuck with.
Oh, the Hollywood one?
Yes. It says that salespeople are to the economy what writers are to Hollywood.
That is such a brilliant way to understand the origin point of value, isn't it?
It really is.
Because in Hollywood, you can have the most expensive IMAX cameras, you can have the most famous A-list actors, legendary directors, and literally hundreds of brilliant special effects artists.
The best of the best.
Right, the best of the best. But if you do not have a script, a story written by a writer, none of those people have jobs.
There's nothing to film.
Exactly. There is absolutely nothing to film. The writer is the catalyst that creates the vacuum that all those other jobs fill.
Wow, yeah.
And Cardone is arguing that the salesperson is the economic equivalent of that writer.
That makes so much sense.
You can have the most efficient factories and brilliant management teams, but until a sale is made, it is all just theoretical potential.
It's an idea costing money, not making money.
Exactly.
Let's push that even further. Think of the economy like a human body.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So the factories, the infrastructure, the shipping lanes, the actual products, those are the muscles and the bones.
Right, the structure.
Exactly, the structure. But the salespeople are the heart.
Oh, wow.
Without the heart physically pumping the blood to where it needs to go, the entire system just flatlines. The muscles atrophy. The bones weaken. The heart is what keeps the lifeblood of the economy, which is capital and resources, circulating.
Right, and to push that heart analogy even further, what happens when the heart beats weakly?
You get an economic recession.
Exactly. The blood stops reaching the extremities. Companies downsize, innovation stalls, people lose their livelihoods. When sales slow down, the entire organism suffers.
It really does.
And because the salesperson is that vital pump, the profession offers a really unique kind of leverage.
How so?
Well, the book highlights that selling is one of the last truly free enterprise opportunities available today.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's a space where an individual can essentially work for themselves, face absolutely no artificial limits on their earning potential, and basically build their own success with literally nothing more than a pen to sign contracts.
A pen and a relentless commitment to excel, right?
Exactly.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Calling it a free enterprise opportunity with no limits sounds incredibly romantic. Right. But isn't it also just a recipe for massive stress?
Well, sure, it can be.
I mean, you're eating what you kill. There's no safety net. You don't get a polite corporate salary just for showing up and, checking your email for 8 hours.
You are touching on the exact paradox that makes people run away from sales in the first place.
Right.
Yes, eating what you kill is stressful, but let's actually look at the alternative, that illusion of the polite corporate salary.
Okay, let's look at it.
How many people do we know who felt totally secure in their corporate jobs, only to be laid off on a random Tuesday because a consulting firm decided their department was redundant?
Ugh, too many. It happens all the time.
Exactly. The book basically challenges our entire definition of job security. True security doesn't come from a fancy title or a corner office or a human resources department.
That actually brings up a great personal story the author shares in the text.
Oh, about his early career.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he talks about getting out of college and having absolutely no idea what he wanted to do. So he took a job in sales.
Just as a filler. Right.
Exactly. He treated it like a quote-unquote temp job. It was just something to pay the rent until he found a real job.
A real job, right.
And he specifically mentions how his friends, his family, and even his former teachers all gave him a hard time about it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They actively rebuked him for settling and told him to go find a real career.
Which is fascinating because what exactly is society's definition of a real job anyway?
Right. What does that even mean?
It's usually something that projects an image of stability and prestige. A banker, an architect, an administrator.
But jobs that sound good at a dinner party.
Exactly. Culture aggressively pushes us toward these paths because they look safe on a resume. But Cardone noticed a glaring contradiction.
Which was?
A lot of these prestigious real jobs didn't actually pay real money.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Furthermore, they often function like gilded cages. Boring routines that just sapped the ambition right out of people with strict ceilings on how much they could ever earn or advance.
He actually joked that the only thing he could associate those real jobs with were the miserable teachers who were pushing him to get one in the first place.
That is hilarious and also a little sad.
It's wild, isn't it? How society pushes us toward this mirage of stability while actively steering us away from the one foundational skill revenue generation that actually guarantees you won't starve.
That is the core insight of this first section. If you learn the art of selling, you will never be without work.
Never.
Regardless of what the broader economy is doing, there is no recession, there is no depression, and there is no technological disruption where businesses suddenly decide, you know what, we don't need people who know how to bring money through the front door.
Right, that's literally impossible.
The person who can generate revenue is the last person fired and the first person hired.
So if you're listening to this on your commute right now, just think about your own position.
Yeah, take a hard look at it.
Learning how to persuade, how to get agreement, and how to close a deal is the ultimate form of self-reliance.
Absolutely.
When you understand the mechanics of getting someone to say yes,
Yeah.
you control the entire cycle. And if you control the cycle, you control your destiny.
You're in the driver's seat.
You are not at the mercy of downsizing because you are the engine keeping the lights on.
Precisely. But your devil's advocate point a moment ago actually sets up the biggest contradiction in this entire deep dive.
Oh, where are we going with this?
Well, if this skill is the literal heartbeat of the global economy and the ultimate guarantor of personal freedom.
Why is it entirely absent from our formal education system?
Exactly.
Yes, I mean, I spent 17 years in classrooms. I took geometry, I took European history, I took chemistry. I did not see a single class on the syllabus called Persuasion 101 or How to Negotiate a Contract.
Not one.
Why is there this massive education gap?
The book offers a very sharp critique of this exact phenomenon. We have collectively swallowed a false assumption.
And what's the assumption?
It's the idea that if a subject isn't taught in a prestigious university, it must not be a respectable high-level career.
Oh, wow.
Right. Because Cardone never saw a course on selling in his entire academic career, his initial instinct was to assume that sales was just a low-class, unsophisticated hustle.
But wait, I have to defend the schools for just a second here.
Okay, let's hear it.
The purpose of school isn't necessarily to teach you every single specific job skill, right? Learning algebra or analyzing Shakespeare might not teach you how to close a real estate deal, but it teaches you critical thinking.
That's the classic argument, yeah.
It teaches you how to learn. So aren't we being a little too harsh on the education system by expecting them to teach sales?
It's a fair defense, I'll give you that. But
Hmm.
the critique in the text isn't that learning history or math is useless.
No.
The critique is about the massive, glaring blind spots when it comes to practical survival. Think about what else schools completely ignore.
Oh, there's a list.
A huge list. They do not teach you how to balance a checkbook or understand compound interest.
Well,
They don't teach you how to buy real estate. They don't teach you how to navigate conflict in a marriage or the psychology of raising resilient children.
oh man, that hits close to home. You can literally graduate with honors in calculus and have a full-blown panic attack trying to understand a mortgage interest rate
Exactly.
or trying to negotiate a salary offer.
Exactly. The formal education system, particularly as it was designed during the Industrial Revolution, has a very specific function.
Oh, gee.
It is highly effective at producing a workforce of people who are very good at remembering what they read, following instructions, and passing standardized tests.
The ultimate rule followers.
But it is notoriously bad at equipping people to apply knowledge to chaotic, real-world situations where the answers aren't just, waiting in the back of a textbook.
It's like spending 17 years reading the instruction manual for a car.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You memorize the manual, you know exactly what the spark plugs do, you can draw a perfect diagram of the transmission, and you know the optimal tire pressure.
You're an expert on paper.
Right, on paper.
Yeah.
But you have never once actually sat behind the wheel in rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
You know the theory perfectly, but you completely lack the application. The moment someone cuts you off on the highway, your manual is completely useless. You don't know how to react.
That is a perfect encapsulation of the gap between academic theory and market reality. And the book grounds this in the actual experience of business owners.
What do the owners say?
When you survey CEOs and entrepreneurs about their biggest struggles, they almost never say, I just can't find people who know enough trivia.
Right. They don't care about that.
The number one problem they face is finding people who can think independently, who don't freeze when faced with rejection, and who can actively solve problems to expand the company.
They need action.
They need application, not just retention.
And the proof is in the results, honestly.
Yeah.
Cardone issues a challenge in the book.
Yeah.
He says, go survey the top 100 most financially successful people in the world.
Yeah. Look at the data.
Look at their biographies. You will not find a single one who attributes their massive success solely to the fact that they got good grades or went to a prestigious school. Many of them are dropouts. The highest echelons of success are driven by something completely outside the academic curriculum.
No, it is really important to note here that the book does not demonize the teachers themselves.
Oh, absolutely not.
In fact, it offers a surprisingly sympathetic view. Teachers are largely underpaid and they are trapped in a very rigid system.
It's a tough job.
Very tough. They are forced to regurgitate state-mandated curriculums that they themselves probably know have very little day-to-day use for their students. The system is simply not architected to teach the messy, psychological, highly dynamic art of persuasion.
Why is that really? Like, if we dig into why it's not taught, isn't it basically because sales is inherently untestable?
That's a huge part of it, yes.
You can't put human persuasion on a Scantron sheet.
No, you can't.
It requires emotional intelligence, it requires dealing with massive amounts of rejection, and it requires adapting on the fly. That just doesn't fit neatly into a 45-minute period before the bell rings.
That is a very astute observation. Academia prefers clean, objective truths.
Right. 2 plus 2 is 4.
Exactly. But in sales, 2 plus 2 might equal 0 if the client doesn't trust you.
Wow. Yeah.
Or it might equal $1 million if you pitch it perfectly.
It's all subjective.
It's totally subjective and psychological. And this leads to a really stark contrast made in the text. The author points out that he personally knows salespeople who are making significantly more money than elite heart surgeons.
That's a bold comparison.
It is, but look at the variables. The salesperson is often making that kind of money with far less personal liability, no malpractice insurance, and arguably much less life or death stress.
That's a very good point.
And they achieved that financial freedom entirely because they mastered a skill that the classroom refused to teach them.
But we culturally revere the heart surgeon, right?
We do because of the intense, grueling academic path required to get that title. But the marketplace is objective.
It doesn't care about titles.
Exactly. It heavily rewards the salesperson because they are the economic engine that generates the revenue required to build the hospital and employ the surgeon in the first place.
So bridging this to reality for a second.
Yeah.
You cannot rely solely on your degree or your resume to carry you through your career.
No. You really can't.
A pristine academic record won't guarantee you a promotion when budgets are tight. What the market actually values is your ability to communicate, to solve problems under pressure, and to persuade others to take action.
That's the real currency.
This means you have to take your education into your own hands. You have to actively seek out books, seminars, mentors, and most importantly, real-world practice to learn how to sell.
Because nobody's going to hand that curriculum to you.
Exactly. Nobody's coming to save you on this one.
Which brings us to the inevitable collision point.
Oh, here we go.
If the schools don't teach persuasion, and yet it is the most valuable skill in the marketplace, what happens to all those people who dutifully went down the path of the real jobs?
They eventually hit a wall.
They hit a massive wall.
And that is the huge universal truth of this whole philosophy. You can hire a brilliant lawyer, you can hire a genius architect, you can hire an Ivy League accountant.
Right.
But no matter who you hire, you personally cannot get along in life without the ability to communicate, negotiate, and close a deal.
It's impossible.
Every single profession on earth eventually relies entirely on sales.
Let's dissect that a bit. Let's look at how the mechanics of selling are embedded in professions that seem completely unrelated to business.
Okay, lay it on me.
Take a politician. What is a political campaign if not a massive high-stakes sales funnel?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it totally is.
Right. The politician is on stage, presenting a vision of the future, trying to overcome objections from the crowd, and ultimately attempting to close the voters so they pull the lever on election day.
Or a public speaker.
Great example.
They aren't necessarily asking for your credit card, but they are absolutely selling you.
100%.
They are trying to convince an auditorium full of skeptical people that their philosophy, their new way of thinking, is the correct one. If the audience doesn't buy the idea, the speaker completely failed.
What about the traditional corporate employee?
The one sitting in the cubicle.
Yeah, the person who thinks they are completely insulated from sales. They are constantly selling.
Oh, so?
Every time they ask for a raise, they have to present a case, they have to highlight their value, overcome their manager's budget objections, and close the negotiation.
As a pitch.
It is a pitch. Every time they pitch a new project in a meeting, they are selling.
Let's go back to that heart surgeon example from earlier.
Oh yeah, let's look at that.
We think of a surgeon as purely a technician, right? They do the bypass, they save the life.
Very mechanical.
But think about the consultation before the surgery even happens.
Oh man.
That surgeon has to sit across from a terrified patient and their anxious family.
High emotion.
The highest. The surgeon has to explain a highly dangerous, invasive procedure, build immense trust in a matter of minutes, mitigate their fear, and get them to sign a consent form.
Wow, yeah.
That is an incredibly high-stakes sales presentation. If the surgeon lacks bedside manner, if they can't sell the patient on the necessity and safety of the procedure, the patient might walk away and literally die.
It is everywhere. It really is.
Everywhere.
The coach is selling the team on the grueling practice schedule so they can win a championship.
The real estate agent is selling the dream of a new home.
The banker is selling the security of a mutual fund.
Even the waiter at your local restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
When they casually mention the truffle pasta special, they are running a sales script.
They absolutely are.
Selling never ends. It is
Yeah.
continuous, and it involves absolutely everyone.
Okay, but if it's so universal, if the surgeon and the politician and the waiter are all doing it, we really have to talk about the elephant in the room here.
Which is?
Why does the word sales make people cringe so hard?
Or the stigma.
Yeah. Why, when I say the word salesperson, do most people immediately picture, like, a guy in a cheap plaid suit at a used car lot trying to hide the fact that the transmission is totally shot?
It's such a specific and universal image, isn't it?
It really is.
Well, that stigma is the biggest barrier to people actually embracing this skill.
Yeah.
And the book tackles it head on.
What does Cardone say about it?
He says the bad reputation of sales is largely the result of a very loud, very destructive minority of criminals and con men. In the past, especially before the internet democratized information, unscrupulous people could use information asymmetry to just rip people off.
Because the buyer couldn't verify anything.
Exactly. But they aren't true salespeople, right? They are swindlers.
Yeah.
But the critical point the author makes is that criminals exist in every single field.
It's true. They really do.
There are terrible, fraudulent doctors who prescribe things they shouldn't.
Unfortunately, yes.
There are lawyers who steal from their clients' trust accounts.
There are accountants who embezzle.
There are teachers who abuse their power.
Right.
Yet we don't condemn the entire institution of medicine just because malpractice exists. We don't say, well, I heard about a bad lawyer once, so I'm never going to use the legal system again.
Precisely. The logic is completely inconsistent when it comes to sales.
It's like if you went to a bad dentist who totally botched your root canal and caused you a week of agony,
Ouch.
you wouldn't swear off taking care of your teeth forever.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't throw away your toothbrush and refuse to ever step foot in a dental clinic again. You'd just go find a better dentist.
Right, a professional.
So why do we let one pushy retail experience or like one obnoxious telemarketer trick us into swearing off the entire concept of persuasion?
It makes zero logical sense.
It makes absolutely no sense to abandon the most important life skill just because some people misuse it.
It's a massive cognitive distortion, and it holds people back immensely. If we look at the reality of high-level achievement across any discipline, the truth is just undeniable.
The book talks about this, right? The top producers.
Yes. The author points out his interactions with top-tier producers, people at the absolute pinnacle of engineering, banking, acting, and film directing.
The best of the best.
And he discovered a universal commonality among all of them.
They all knew how to sell.
Exactly. Every single one of them reached the top of their respective industries, not just because they were technically proficient, but because they rigorously studied negotiating, selling, and persuading.
Technical skill isn't enough.
Not at all. Think about an actor. An actor doesn't get the starring role just by being good at acting.
Right. There are thousands of good actors.
Exactly. They have to sell the director on their specific interpretation of the character during the audition.
That's a pitch.
A film director has to sell the studio executives on a $100 million budget.
Imagine the pressure of that sale.
They understood that technical excellence was merely the baseline. The true differentiator, the thing that catapulted them to the very top, was their ability to sell their vision, their projects, and themselves.
The ultimate, unavoidable truth laid out in this chapter is that the ability to communicate and convince others is your absolute greatest asset.
Without a doubt.
And the inability to communicate is a massive, life-altering liability.
It will hold you back forever.
It doesn't matter what your ambitions are, whether you want to run a Fortune 500 company or just, start a local community garden.
Right.
You are required to communicate with other human beings to get it done. The better you can communicate your vision, the more people will agree with you. And the more you can get others to agree with you, the more you can have your way in life.
If we pull back and look at the bigger picture here, this completely strips away the illusion and the comfort of job titles.
Totally.
It does not matter what is printed on your business card. You could be an hourly shift worker, you could be a mid-level project manager, or you could be the chief executive officer.
Titles don't mean a thing in this context.
Correct. No, they don't. Your survival, your professional stature, and your ability to actually advance your life depend entirely on getting other people to agree with your propositions.
So think about your daily interactions. Stop thinking of sales as something dirty or something that happens only when a cash register opens up.
Right, drop the stereotype.
Recognize that virtually every interaction where you desire a specific outcome is a sales presentation.
Every single one.
When you are trying to get your toddler to eat their vegetables instead of throwing them on the floor,
You are selling.
you are selling. When you are trying to get your spouse to agree to go to the mountains instead of the beach for vacation,
You are definitely selling.
when you are trying to convince your neighbors to sign a petition for a new stop sign on your street,
You are selling.
it's all sales.
It really is about shifting from a passive mindset to an active one.
Expand on that.
Well, when you synthesize all the concepts we've explored today, a very clear, profound insight emerges from the text.
And what's that?
Selling is not merely a department operating in some cubicle farm at a corporate office. It is the universal currency of human progress.
Wow. That is the perfect way to encapsulate it.
Thank you.
Persuasion is the invisible engine that drives the global economy. Keeping food on the table and factories running.
Exactly.
It is the crucial, practical life skill that steps in to fill the massive, glaring gaps left behind by our formal education system.
The gaps they refuse to fill.
Right. And whether people are comfortable admitting it or not, it is the hidden structural foundation of absolutely every successful career on Earth.
Completely inescapable.
The formula is beautifully simple, honestly, even if executing it is hard.
The simple things usually are the hardest.
True. And the formula is, the more you can get others to agree with you, the more you get your way, and the more you will actually enjoy your life.
That's the bottom line. And, knowledge is only valuable when it is deeply understood and practically applied. By stripping away the cultural stigma, by letting go of that used car salesman image, and choosing to see persuasion as a necessary, honorable, and vital life skill, you give yourself an unbelievable advantage.
A massive edge.
You empower yourself to navigate the friction of the real world effectively. You transition from being a passive participant who just, hopes things work out favorably, to an active creator who dictates their own circumstances.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on today.
Something to mull over.
Exactly. If getting your way in life, protecting your family's financial future, and achieving your personal goals ultimately comes down to your ability to sell,
And we've established that it does.
you have to ask yourself a hard question. Are you approaching your daily interactions as an amateur, just winging it and hoping for the best?
Crossing your fingers.
Right. Or are you ready to study the mechanics of agreement and become a true professional?
That is the defining question. That's the fork in the road that separates the frustrated from the truly successful.
It really is. Next time, we're going to dive into the stark, uncompromising differences between that amateur mindset and the true professional.
Oh, chapter 3 is going to be intense.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
We'll explore why stepping into the ranks of the greats requires a level of psychological commitment that most people are, frankly, absolutely terrified of.
You definitely won't want to miss it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time. What if the only reason you aren't getting exactly what you want out of life right now is that you're treating your ultimate survival skill like, I don't know, a weekend hobby?
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy question to start with.
I mean, it is. But if you look around at the people who just seem to effortlessly dictate their own terms, the ones who secure the funding, get the promotions, rally people to their causes.
Right, the ones who never seem panicked when the economy takes a nosedive.
Exactly. And the gap between them and the person who is just paralyzed by every market fluctuation, it's not luck.
No, it's not.
And it isn't a silver spoon either. It really comes down to a harsh, binary choice regarding one specific skill.
Are you playing at it, or have you made it your profession?
Yes, because framing it as a survival skill,
Yeah.
it changes the entire complexion of the conversation.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Because people usually relegate persuasion or, selling to a really specific job category.
Right, like
That-
something done by someone in a car lot or a call center.
Exactly. But when you strip away the corporate jargon, getting another human being to agree with you, to invest in you, or to believe in your vision, that is the fundamental engine of human survival and progress.
It really is.
And if you leave that engine to chance, you are essentially outsourcing your destiny.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And we are pulling this concept directly from Chapter 3 of Grant Cardone's Sell or Be Sold. The chapter is literally titled Professional or Amateur.
It's such a good chapter.
It is. And the mission for this deep dive is to aggressively dismantle how most of us approach our careers. We're moving way past the standard advice of, work hard and be nice.
Right, because that doesn't actually guarantee anything.
No, it doesn't. So we're digging into the actual mechanics of why some people can predictably manufacture success, while others are just constantly surprised by their own failures.
Yeah, if you feel like your income or your trajectory is at the mercy of your boss or the algorithm or, the Federal Reserve, this is where we reset the foundation.
Absolutely. So let's just start with that word, professional. Because I feel like the societal definition has become incredibly watered down.
Oh, completely. If you wear a tailored suit, respond to emails within 20 minutes, and use words like synergy in meetings, people just call you a professional.
Right. It's an aesthetic now.
Exactly. It's just corporate etiquette. But Cardone bypasses all that and goes straight to the structural definition.
Which is what exactly?
A professional is someone who is engaged in a specified activity as their main paid occupation. It is not a pastime.
Okay.
It's the core mechanism by which they sustain their life.
Okay, but I want to push back on the application of that just a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Let's say I am a senior structural engineer,
Yeah.
right? My main paid occupation is calculating load-bearing capacities and making sure a bridge doesn't collapse.
Right, which is very important.
Super important. And I spent like 8 years in school for it. I am paid for that technical expertise. So by definition, I am a professional engineer.
Okay, I follow you.
But Cardone seems to be suggesting that my engineering degree is secondary to my ability to sell. How does that hold up when my literal job title demands technical perfection, not a sales pitch?
That's a really great pushback. But here's the thing. Your technical perfection is the product, right?
Yeah.
But the product is entirely useless if it remains theoretical.
Okay, how so?
Well, consider the life cycle of that bridge. Before you ever calculate a single load-bearing metric, someone had to persuade a city council to allocate $50 million for the project.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And when you discover a flaw in the architectural design, you have to persuade the lead architect, whose ego is very much attached to that design. You have to persuade them to change it.
Yeah, that's not just math. That's heavy negotiation.
Exactly. And if you want to run your own firm one day, you have to persuade clients to trust you over the firm across the street. So the engineering allows the bridge to stand, but persuasion allowed the bridge to exist in the first place.
That is, I mean, that reframes the entire concept of the workplace.
It does. Therefore, if you want to be in control of your career as an engineer, mastering your discipline is really just the baseline. Persuasion has to become your co-occupation.
So technical competence just gets you the interview, basically.
Right. Technical competence gets you in the room. Persuasion actually builds the career.
Okay, I get that now.
Yeah.
But here is where Cardone drops a statistic that, honestly, it feels almost entirely fabricated just to make a point.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, he claims that based on his exposure to hundreds of thousands of salespeople, 99% of the people whose actual job title is sales professional have absolutely no idea what they're doing.
It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
I just struggle to buy that.
Yeah.
If 99% of commercial pilots were faking it, planes would fall out of the sky every second.
That's a great analogy.
Right. How can a global industry function if only 1% of its practitioners understand the mechanics?
The aviation analogy actually highlights why the statistic is plausible, even if it's super jarring, because aviation is governed by absolute physics.
Gravity doesn't care about your feelings.
Exactly. Gravity provides immediate fatal feedback if you ignore its rules. But persuasion, however, operates in the realm of psychology and probability.
Okay, so it's a softer science.
Right. A mediocre salesperson can still close a deal simply because the buyer was already desperate for the product.
Ah, I see. So the market was already doing the heavy lifting.
Precisely. The market provides a certain baseline of momentum. During an economic boom, a terrible salesperson can make 6 figures just by picking up the phone and taking orders.
Wow. So they confuse the market's momentum with their own skill.
Yes. They don't know why the client said yes, just as they don't know why the next client says no. They are riding a wave, they aren't controlling the ocean.
So the lack of immediate fatal feedback basically allows incompetence to hide in plain sight.
Exactly. They are essentially playing roulette, hitting black 3 times in a row and calling themselves professional gamblers.
That is such a wild way to think about it.
It's the crucial distinction. A professional, whether in gambling, aviation, or persuasion, operates on predictability.
Predictability.
Right. They know that if they execute variable A, mitigate objection B, and sequence their closing arguments in pattern C, they will achieve a successful outcome at a highly predictable mathematical rate.
It's like a formula for them.
Exactly. The 99% that Cardone refers to, they cannot predict their own income for the next quarter.
Because they're just guessing.
Yes, they are hoping for good leads, hoping for a good mood from the client, hoping the economy holds up, and hope is the defining characteristic of the amateur.
Wow. Hope is the defining characteristic of the amateur. That hits hard.
It's meant to.
But if predictability is the hallmark of the professional, that implies a level of study that most people would find exhausting.
It is exhausting, but it's necessary.
Cardone uses his own background to illustrate this, right? Because he didn't just pop out of the womb closing deals.
No, not at all. He admits to spending years being completely average, relying entirely on that hope strategy.
Right, he was just winging it.
Yeah, and he didn't cross the threshold into mastery until he was 26. And crossing that threshold required a relentless, almost obsessive period of studying the mechanics of human agreement.
Which kind of shatters the myth of the natural-born closer that Hollywood loves to sell us, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. The natural talent myths is actually a very convenient psychological shield for amateurs.
Wait, a shield? How so?
Think about it. If I convince myself that you are just a naturally gifted speaker, then I don't have to feel bad about my own inability to persuade an audience.
Oh, I see. It lets me off the hook.
Exactly. I can just say your success is an accident of genetics, not the result of thousands of hours of grueling practice.
So it protects my ego.
Yes. Acknowledging that persuasion is a learned mechanical skill is deeply uncomfortable for the amateur because it removes their primary excuse for failure.
Because if it's a learned skill, and I don't have it, it's my fault for not learning it.
Bingo. Cardone's transition at 26 proves that greatness in this field is an acquired architecture of habits, not some genetic lottery ticket.
Okay, I see the logic there, but there is a fascinating paradox here that we need to talk about.
Okay, what is it?
If mastering persuasion is the ultimate lever for success, why do the absolute titans of industry, history, and culture never identify as salespeople?
Ah, that's a great point.
Right. If I look at the people who have shifted the tectonic plates of society, none of them have persuasion expert or salesperson on their resume.
No, they definitely don't.
So if it is the most important skill, why is the title universally hidden by the people who are best at it?
Well, they don't hide the title. They render it obsolete by the sheer scale of what they are selling.
Obsolete, what do you mean?
When you master a skill to an elite level, you are no longer defined by the action of the skill, but by the outcome of it.
Okay, I think I need an example for that.
Sure. Think of a master bricklayer. Over time, as their vision expands, they eventually just become known as the architect of the cathedral. Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. Cardone points to historical figures to prove this, and it fundamentally alters how you view historical events. Take Martin Luther King Jr., for example.
Okay, let's look at MLK through this lens. Because the standard historical view is that he was a moral philosopher, a civil rights leader, and a generational orator.
Right.
So to call him a salesperson almost feels, I don't know, reductive at first glance.
It feels reductive only if you hold on to the sleazy stereotype of a salesperson.
Fair point.
If you elevate sales to its true definition, which is the transfer of conviction and the securing of agreement, then Martin Luther King Jr. executed the most complex, high-stakes sales campaign of the 20th century.
Whoa. Okay, break that down for me.
Consider the product he was selling, a total dismantling of deep-seated, institutionalized racism.
And his target audience was a deeply divided, actively hostile nation.
Exactly.
And the cost of the product for his buyers was incredibly high.
Astronomical. Because he was asking his followers to buy into a vision that might literally cost them their lives, their jobs, or their freedom.
Yes.
And he was asking the opposition to surrender power, status, and generations of ingrained prejudice. That's a ridiculously hard sell.
Precisely the point. He had to handle objections that were rooted in centuries of hatred. He couldn't just give a good pitch. He had to orchestrate boycotts, which, if you think about it, is a massive economic negotiation.
Right, hitting the wallet.
He had to leverage the media, which is a massive public relations pitch. The I Have a Dream speech was not just beautiful prose, it was a masterful closing argument.
A closing argument. I've never thought of it like that.
It was designed to paint a vision of the future so compelling that the status quo became unbearable for the listener.
He predicted the objections, he organized the follow-up, and he secured historic legislative agreements.
Yes, he was the ultimate professional of persuasion.
That is just mind-blowing. Okay, let's switch gears to another one of Cardone's examples, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, this is a fun one.
Yeah, because we usually picture him flying a kite with a key or sitting around signing the Declaration of Independence. But his time in France during the American Revolution was like pure, unadulterated, high-stakes sales.
Benjamin Franklin is the archetype of the undercover professional.
Undercover? How?
Well, he goes to France representing a startup nation with no credit history, a ragtag militia, and zero global leverage.
Yeah, America on paper looked like a terrible investment at the time.
A completely terrible investment. And his prospect is King Louis XVI.
Wow.
Right. And Franklin's objective is to secure millions in funding, military personnel, and naval support to fight the entire British Empire.
It's the ultimate venture capital pitch, but the collateral is literally a continent.
Exactly. And how does he do it? He doesn't just walk into the court of Versailles and beg for money. He deeply understands his prospect.
Okay, what was his read on the French court?
Well, the French elite had this really romanticized vision of the American frontier. They viewed Americans as these noble, rustic philosophers who were untouched by European corruption.
Kind of like a trending aesthetic for them.
Exactly. So Franklin, who was actually a very wealthy cosmopolitan intellectual from Philadelphia, shows up in Paris wearing a simple brown suit and a marten fur cap.
No way. He dressed down on purpose.
Yes, he played the part they wanted to buy. He basically created a persona that fit their romanticized market demand.
That is brilliant.
It is. And he leveraged France's existing animosity toward Britain He created a sense of urgency. He manipulated the geopolitical market to make his product seem completely irresistible.
He engineered the agreement.
Completely. If Franklin lacked the mechanics of persuasion, the American Revolution likely would have run out of capital and collapsed.
It is incredible to look at history through that framework. I mean, you can apply it to almost anyone.
You really can.
Think about Martha Stewart. She didn't sell recipes. She sold an aspirational aesthetic to the middle class.
Great example.
Or a trial lawyer. A trial lawyer doesn't sell legal precedents. They sell a specific narrative of morality to 12 strangers on a jury who just want to go home.
Exactly. The common denominator of world builders is the mastery of agreement.
Which brings the responsibility squarely back to the listener.
It does. There's no escaping it.
Right. Because if you were sitting in a cubicle or running a small business or trying to manage a team, you have to adopt that Franklin or MLK mindset.
Yes. Your daily tasks are secondary. Your primary occupation is convincing your stakeholders, be it your boss, your spouse, your clients, to invest in your vision of the future.
And the moment you accept that, you stop being a passenger in your own life.
That's the exact moment things shift.
But accepting that means we have to confront the dark side of this equation.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah, because if we now know what the professional looks like, we have to look in the mirror and identify the amateur traits that we are currently harboring. And Cardone is merciless when breaking down the trap of the amateur.
He has to be merciless, honestly, because the amateur mindset is an incredibly comfortable place to hide.
It really is.
Cardone defines an amateur not just as a beginner, but as someone who engages in a pursuit as a pastime rather than a profession, lacking both experience and competence.
It's a mindset of dabbling.
Yes, exactly, dabbling.
So let's dissect the symptoms of this dabbling mindset. The first one Cardone identifies as the belief that selling is sleazy or dishonorable.
Right, that classic stereotype.
But where does this specific disdain come from? Because as we just established, persuasion is the tool of heroes and innovators.
Right.
So why do so many intelligent people proudly claim, oh, I'm not a sales guy, as if it's a badge of honor?
It's fascinating, really. It stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of value. Amateurs associate selling with coercion or manipulation because they have only ever noticed bad salespeople.
Well, that makes sense, because good persuasion is invisible.
Exactly. When you are persuaded by a master, you don't feel sold. You feel like you've made a brilliant decision.
You feel empowered.
Yes. Because the invisible art of true persuasion goes unnoticed, society only identifies the clumsy, aggressive tactics of the amateur as sales.
So they judge the whole profession based on the worst performers.
Right. Therefore, the person who refuses to learn the skill out of some misplaced sense of moral superiority is actually just protecting their own ego from having to learn something difficult.
That makes perfect sense. It's like refusing to learn how to cook because you once got food poisoning at a cheap diner, declaring all cooking to be toxic.
That is a perfect analogy.
It is just an intellectually lazy defense mechanism. And this leads directly to the second symptom, the absolute terror of rejection.
Rejection is the ultimate diagnostic tool for distinguishing the amateur from the professional.
Oh, I like that. Say more about that.
Well, how an individual processes the word no tells you literally everything about their level of mastery.
Okay, let me bring in a different analogy here to explore this.
Sure, go ahead.
Think about a professional index fund investor versus an amateur day trader.
Okay, I'm fracking.
The amateur day trader buys a stock, the stock drops 5% in an hour, and they just panic.
Right, they start sweating.
Exactly. They feel personally attacked by the market. They stress sweat, and they sell at a loss because they cannot handle the emotional weight of the red numbers. They think a temporary dip is a permanent failure.
Because they're entirely emotionally invested in the immediate outcome.
Yes. But the professional index fund manager looks at a 5% drop and feels absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
They understand the macroeconomic mechanics. They know the historical variance. A red day is just a data point within a 10-year algorithmic model that mathematically guarantees a return over time.
They zoom out.
Right.
Right.
They don't feel rejected by the market. They just process the data.
That is a brilliant parallel. Because the amateur day trader is identical to the amateur salesperson.
How so?
When the amateur hears no from a client, their ego absorbs the blow directly. They internalize it as a reflection of their personal worth.
They think, this person doesn't like me.
Or, my product is terrible, or I'm a failure. It drains their energy and they just want to quit for the day to protect their feelings.
Whereas the professional treats the no as just a data point. in their algorithmic model of success,
Exactly. The professional knows their conversion rate.
like the math of it.
Right. If they know they close 1 out of every 10 presentations, then a no is not a personal attack. It is simply step number 1 through 9 on the way to the guaranteed yes at step 10.
So they actually want the no's.
Yes. The professional actually seeks out the no faster because it burns through the statistical variance quicker. Because they understand the mechanics, there is zero emotional turbulence.
Wow. That concept of emotional turbulence really ties into what I think is the most dangerous symptom Cardone lists.
Which one is that?
The belief that success is dictated by fate or the gods. This is like the ultimate abdication of responsibility.
Yeah, in psychology, this is known as having an external locus of control.
External locus of control. Unpack that for us.
It is the belief that external forces, the economy, the weather, the mood of the client, the quality of the leads, dictate your outcomes. Amateurs constantly externalize their failures.
So they say things like, the market is just really soft right now.
Or, the client was a cheapskate. Or, my boss didn't give me the right territory.
It's literally the language of a victim.
It is. And the tragedy of the victim mentality in business is that while it protects your ego in the short term, it absolutely destroys your bank account in the long term.
Because you never learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. If you truly believe the market controls your success, you have no incentive to study, adapt, or improve.
Right. Why bother practicing your negotiation skills if the gods are just going to decide whether you get the deal anyway?
Why bother at all? But the professional operates with a militant internal locus of control.
Okay, so what does that look like when they fail?
If a deal fails, the professional asks, what question did I fail to ask? Where did I lose their attention? How did I fail to build enough value?
They turn it entirely inward.
Yes, they take absolute ownership of the failure, which gives them absolute power to fix it next time.
Cardone uses the game of golf to illustrate this gap between dabbling and ownership. But I want to expand on his analogy a little bit.
Sure.
He talks about the amateur golfer who goes out on Saturday, drinks a few beers with their buddies, swings as hard as possible, and just relies on enthusiasm.
Right, I'm going to crush this drive.
Exactly. And sometimes it works, mostly it doesn't.
And when it doesn't, they blame the wind, or the clubs, or the fact that they didn't sleep well.
Right. But contrast that with Tiger Woods in his prime.
Oh man, completely different universe.
Yes. Tiger wasn't relying on enthusiasm. He wasn't standing on the tee box, pumping himself up with affirmations.
Yeah, he was calculating.
He understood the exact biomechanics of his hip rotation. He knew the precise loft of the club face down to the fraction of a degree. He calculated the humidity in the air and how it would affect the spin rate of the ball.
It's science.
It is.
Yeah.
He wasn't hoping. He was executing a physical equation he had solved thousands of times before.
Which leads to Cardone's most profound insight in this entire section. Enthusiasm is great, but it is never a replacement for knowing.
Let's hover on that for a second,
Yeah.
because corporate culture is utterly obsessed with enthusiasm.
Oh, it really is.
We have the morning hype meetings, the motivational speakers, the Slack channels filled with like rocket ship emojis. We are addicted to pumping people up.
It's exhausting.
It is. But Cardone is saying that enthusiasm is essentially a cheap substitute for competence.
It is. Artificial enthusiasm is often just a mask for deep anxiety.
Oh, wow. A mask for anxiety.
Think about it. If you are about to walk into a negotiation and you don't actually know how to handle the pricing objection that you know is coming, your heart rate spikes.
Yeah.
You feel terrified.
Right, fight or flight.
Yes. So to combat that terror, you try to artificially pump yourself up with fake confidence. You try to substitute energy for strategy.
But energy runs out the moment the client throws a curveball.
The balloon pops immediately. The client says no, and all that enthusiasm just vanishes.
Gone.
But consider the professional. Who knows? They have role-played that specific pricing objection 500 times.
So they're ready.
They know the exact sequence of questions to diffuse it. They aren't anxious walking into the room. They don't need a motivational speech. They are incredibly calm, relaxed, and present because the outcome is already highly predictable to them.
True confidence is quiet.
Yes, it is the byproduct of undeniable competence.
I want to tie this back to the listener who is realizing, like, right now that they have been operating as an amateur.
It's a tough realization.
It is. What is the immediate, actionable shift they need to make? It can't just be read a book. There has to be a psychological severing from their old habits.
The shift requires two brutal, non-negotiable decisions.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you have to look objectively at your life, your income, your stress levels, your career trajectory, and acknowledge that your technical skills are no longer enough to protect you.
Ouch. Okay.
You must accept that your inability to predict agreements is the single bottleneck to your freedom.
That is heavy. And the second decision.
Second, you have to decide today to treat the study of persuasion like a medical student treats anatomy.
Meaning you can't just dabble in it.
Exactly. You have to stop viewing it as a dirty word and start viewing it as the architecture of your future. It requires a total commitment to study, role play, and critique your own performance without ego.
Which is a perfect segue into the macroeconomic view of this chapter. Key idea number 3 is where Cardone connects the individual mindset to the global economy.
This is a really important section.
He talks about the great shortage and the resulting economic divide.
This is where Cardone flips the narrative of modern economics on its head.
Because if you spend 5 minutes on LinkedIn or reading the financial news, the overwhelming consensus is that the world is too competitive, right?
Right. Everyone says every market is saturated.
Yeah. There are too many real estate agents, too many SaaS startups, too many freelance consultants. The amateur looks at this and just despairs, thinking the pie is shrinking.
And you hear this constantly. People say, I want to start a marketing agency, but the market is completely saturated. I can't compete.
So how does Cardone view this?
Cardone argues that they are looking at the wrong metric entirely.
How so?
There is no shortage of people attempting to sell things,
Okay.
but there is an absolute terrifying shortage of people who are genuinely great at it. The saturation is entirely at the bottom rung of the ladder.
Ah, I see.
Millions of amateurs are fighting for scraps, cutting their prices, and engaging in this brutal race to the bottom because they have no specialized skill to differentiate themselves.
So the market isn't saturated with competition, it's saturated with incompetence.
Precisely, and this creates a severe economic divide. Because there are millions of mediocre amateurs, their economic value is almost zero. They are entirely replaceable.
Because anyone can just bring enthusiasm.
Right. But because there is a severe shortage of true professionals, the individuals who can predictably and reliably close complex agreements, the market values them astronomically.
It's pure supply and demand, but applied to human capital rather than commodities.
Yes.
If a company has $1 million product, they are not going to trust it to an amateur who relies on a hyped-up morning meeting.
Yeah, they would never risk it.
They're going to pay a premium, whatever it takes, to secure the professional who guarantees the conversion.
The wealth of the world doesn't disappear. It just flows uphill to the people who understand how to capture it. The professional isn't competing with the millions of amateurs.
They're playing a different game entirely.
Exactly. The professional is operating in an entirely different stratosphere where the demand for their skill set vastly outpaces the supply.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
It is easy to be a highly paid professional when money is cheap, interest rates are low, and companies are just throwing cash around, right?
Sure.
Everyone looks like a genius in a bull market. What happens when the macroeconomic environment actually crashes?
That's the real test.
Let's talk about like a 2008-style recession or an industry-specific collapse. Doesn't the professional suffer alongside the amateur?
An economic crisis is actually the ultimate stress test that proves Cardone's thesis perfectly.
Really? How?
When a recession hits, the amateur is wiped out almost instantly.
Because they have no foundation.
Right. Because the ambient momentum of the market vanishes. The people who were buying just because the economy was good suddenly stop buying.
And the amateur relied entirely on that momentum.
Yes. So they suddenly have zero pipeline, they get laid off, and they retreat to their external locus of control, blaming the recession for their failure.
They say, nobody has any money, the industry is dead.
Right. It's the government's fault.
Yeah.
But observe the professional in that exact same environment.
What do they do differently?
Well, yes, the external conditions become significantly harder. The wind is now blowing directly in their face. Objections regarding budget become severe.
So it does get tougher.
It does. But the professional doesn't panic because they understand their metrics. If it previously took 10 calls to get one deal and the recession makes buyers twice as hesitant, the professional knows it will now take 20 calls to get one deal.
The math equation just changed. The fundamental laws of physics didn't break.
Exactly. So what does the professional do? They adapt. They refine their objection handling to address the new economic fears of their clients.
They update their script.
Yes. And most importantly, they simply double their actionable effort. They make the 20 calls.
because they can control their output.
Right. Because they have no internal ceiling on their work ethic and they have a solid floor made of predictable skills, they always survive.
And often they don't just survive, they consolidate power, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Because while the amateurs are quitting the industry and complaining on social media, the professional is out there scooping up all their abandoned clients.
Yes. They capture massive market share during the downturn. So when the economy eventually recovers, their baseline is infinitely higher than it was before.
That is the ultimate promise of this chapter. Cardone is outlining the blueprint for becoming economy-proof.
Economy-proof, that's exactly it.
When you master this, you no longer live in fear of the news cycle. You don't care if interest rates go up 1/4 of a point.
You really don't.
You don't care if your company changes the compensation structure. Because you own the fundamental machinery of revenue generation, you dictate your own reality.
You choose your market, you choose your clients, and you command your price.
That phrase, economy-proof, it's profound.
Right.
It shifts the goal from seeking a safe job with good benefits to building an internal fortress of capability.
I love that visual, an internal fortress.
But to get inside that fortress, Cardone uses a phrase that is, honestly, somewhat intimidating.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words.
He says you must be consumed by the desire to be great. That implies a level of obsession that most people would find genuinely unhealthy. What does that consumption actually look like in practice?
It looks like an uncompromising dedication to the microscopic details of the craft.
Give me an example.
It means recording your own pitches, playing them back in your car, and cringing at your own filler words and weak transitions.
That sounds painful.
It is painful. It means dissecting a lost deal, not to find an excuse, but to find the precise psychological misstep you made in minute 14 of the presentation.
You have to be ruthlessly honest with yourself.
Exactly. It means studying the masters, reading the books, and treating your own mind like a high-performance engine that requires constant tuning.
It reminds me of the stories about Kobe Bryant.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Because Kobe wasn't just passionate about basketball. Passion is for fans. Kobe was consumed by the geometry of the court.
Right. He was obsessed with the mechanics.
He would practice a single footwork pivot for 4 hours in an empty gym just to shave a fraction of a second off his release time. He studied the psychological tendencies of the referees. That is what it means to be consumed.
The amateur watches the game. The professional dissects the film.
Man, that's so true.
And that level of consumption is the toll you must pay to cross the bridge from amateur to professional.
The entry fee.
Yes. But the reward for that obsession is the absolute elimination of economic anxiety. It is the freedom to look at any challenge, any market, or any product and know with absolute certainty that you can generate success.
Okay, let's synthesize this down. We have journeyed through the redefinition of the professional, the psychological traps of the amateur, and the harsh realities of the economic divide.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. If there is one singular truth that the listener must extract from the depths of Chapter 3, what is it?
The singular truth is that your current station in life is the exact reflection of your level of commitment to the art of persuasion.
Wow, okay.
True freedom, lasting wealth, and the ability to dictate your own future are not gifts bestowed upon the lucky. They are the deliberate, manufactured results of deciding to stop treating life's most vital mechanism like a casual pastime.
You are either operating with the predictable mathematical certainty of the professional, or you are gambling your future on the enthusiastic guesswork of the amateur.
Exactly. There is no middle ground.
The gap between where you are and where you want to be is entirely bridged by mastery.
And once you accept that reality, you can no longer plead ignorance. You know the rules of the game now.
Which brings us to a really provocative thought for you to chew on before our next deep dive.
Oh, what is it?
What if the people you always thought were just lucky, the ones getting the promotions, the dream clients, the perfect partnerships, what if they aren't lucky at all?
Right. What if they're just running a script?
Exactly. What if they're just running a predictable mechanical script of persuasion that you simply haven't bothered to learn yet? And even crazier, think about how algorithms on social media are basically just automated persuasion systems. If you don't learn the mechanics of human agreement, you are leaving yourself completely vulnerable to the machines and people who do.
That is a terrifying but very real perspective.
It is. Which brings us to the precipice of the next step. Now that we have exposed the absolute necessity of abandoning the amateur mindset, the logical question is not if we should change, but how.
Right. How do you actually do it?
How do you actively rewire years of passive habits? How do you generate that level of absolute consumption without burning out?
Those are the big questions.
In our next deep dive, we're going to crack open Chapter 4 of Sell or Be Sold. We'll explore the concrete mechanics of total commitment,
I can't wait for that one.
and we will unpack what Cardone identifies as the ultimate, almost supernatural byproduct of becoming a professional. The ability to literally predict the future of your deals before they even happen. You won't want to miss how that mechanism works. So, if you hate your job right now, or, if you're just struggling to get your way in life, it's not because the economy is bad, and it's not because you're unlucky.
Right, which is what we all want to believe.
Exactly. According to the material we're diving into today, it's actually a much more uncomfortable reality. It's simply because you don't actually know what you're doing yet. And honestly, you haven't truly committed.
It is a harsh truth to swallow right out of the gate, but when you approach it analytically, it actually reveals this incredibly empowering framework.
Yeah, totally.
So today, our mission is to decode the anatomy of professional greatness. We're pulling entirely from Chapter 4, which is titled The Greats, from a really foundational masterclass text on business and persuasion.
And over the course of this deep dive, we're going to explore the exact psychological shifts that separate the, struggling amateurs from wildly successful professionals.
Right. Specifically, we'll be examining the mechanics behind two critical forces, fanatical commitment and predictive observation.
The tension here is just palpable. There is a deep psychological friction when we realize that our daily frustrations might just be a mask for our own lack of mastery.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just a natural human reflex, right? To externalize failure, to blame the market or the clients or the boss or the industry.
Yeah, it's always someone else's fault. But analyzing this chapter really forces a shift inward, and it begins with this rather absolute concept of 100% commitment.
Right.
And the author isn't merely suggesting we just try harder. It's way deeper than that.
Far from it, yeah. The definition of commitment used here is completely uncompromising. It's literally to devote oneself completely to something.
Completely. That absolute nature is the foundation of everything else we're going to discuss today.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, true commitment requires the deliberate elimination of any and all other options. You just cannot operate efficiently if you are half in.
Like having a foot out the door.
Exactly. The psychological mechanics behind this are deeply rooted in how our brains allocate cognitive resources. When you maintain a plan B, a backup plan.
You're essentially levying a tax on your working memory.
Right. You're actively dedicating neural pathways to calculating exit strategies, which means psychologically you are preparing to fail at plan A.
The cognitive load theory angle there makes a lot of sense. If 20% of my brain is constantly scanning the horizon for a safety net, I only have 80% left to solve the complex problems directly in front of me.
Yeah, you're literally handicapping yourself.
But we are so heavily conditioned by modern culture to, diversify our options. Never put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Oh, absolutely. We hear that all the time.
So the assertion that this safety net is actually a trap that requires a massive paradigm shift for most people.
It really does. And to illustrate the mechanics of this, the author introduces this great analogy about a parking space.
Oh yeah, the parking lot. Walk us through that.
So when you commit to parking a car, the process is definitive. You drive into a lot, you locate a spot, pull the vehicle in, turn off the engine, get out, and crucially, you stop looking for other spaces.
Right, you're done.
Yeah. You don't walk toward the building constantly glancing over your shoulder to see if a spot opened up 30 feet closer to the entrance. You made a decision. You are parked.
Okay, but let me challenge the practicality of that for a second. Because, a career isn't as static as a parking lot.
Sure.
Let's say I commit 100% to selling pagers in 2005. If I burn the ships and refuse to look at the emerging cell phone market, I'm just blindly going down with a sinking ship.
That's a fair point.
Right. So does this concept of absolute commitment account for the difference between dedicating yourself to a craft versus just stubbornly chaining yourself to a dying industry?
That is a really critical distinction, and yes, the framework absolutely accounts for it. The commitment being discussed isn't necessarily to a specific immutable product. It's rather to the environment and the craft of your current role. To address that fear of being trapped, the author actually shifts from a business analogy to a deeply personal one.
The life partner analogy.
Exactly, committing to a life partner. Once you make that absolute commitment to someone, the most logical and stabilizing action is to cease evaluating other potential mates.
You stop looking around.
Right. Are there people in the world who might objectively possess different or maybe even better traits? Statistically, yeah, of course.
Sure.
But the act of committing means you remove the evaluation process entirely. You take the partnership you have, and through your dedicated, undivided energy, you build it into the most fulfilling relationship possible.
Wow, so if we apply that back to the pager example.
Yeah, the commitment is to mastering the art of the sale, the understanding of the client, and the mechanics of the business right where you stand.
I see. So if the industry shifts, a master who is committed to learning how to operate at the highest level can just pivot their vehicle.
Exactly. The amateur is still circling the lot, never having actually learned how to drive.
The distinction there is just fascinating. You aren't committing to the pager. You are committing to the discipline of being an elite professional in your current space.
Right. The discipline itself is the focus.
And there is a detail in this chapter that perfectly physicalizes this mindset. The author describes wearing this small gold lapel pin that simply reads 100%.
I love that detail.
Yeah. And when he's asked if he wears this pin to signal his dedication to his customers, his response completely reorients the entire purpose of professional attire.
He says he wears it for himself.
Exactly. It is a tactile, constant reminder that he is fully committed to his craft. He isn't performing dedication for the client. He is anchoring his own psychology.
And the underlying mechanism there is about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. The pin serves as a cognitive anchor.
So what's the practical application for the listener here?
Well, the takeaway is to conduct a really rigorous objective audit of your current professional posture.
Like, ask yourself some hard questions.
Yeah. Are you secretly evaluating other parking spaces? Are you habitually scrolling job boards? Or maybe daydreaming about an entirely different industry while simultaneously wondering why your current projects are stagnant?
Which happens all the time.
All the time. And the correlation is clear. You cannot expect extraordinary output from an environment where your input is fractured.
You have to be all in.
The directive is to make a firm decision. Park the car, turn off the engine, and allocate 100% of your cognitive resources to the task at hand.
Which naturally bridges to the next major psychological hurdle outlined in the chapter. Because once you park the car, the immediate threat to that commitment is boredom or
Yeah.
frustration.
Oh, yeah, the greener pastures syndrome.
Right. It's the phenomenon where we think the grass is always greener on the other side. That cliche is ubiquitous, but the breakdown of why we actually perceive it that way is incredibly analytical.
The author dissects the cognitive bias inherent in that cliche. The individual peering over the fence, marveling at a neighbor's lush green yard, is almost always the individual who is failing to maintain their own property.
They aren't doing the work at all.
Exactly. The chapter introduces a very grounded reality. Weeds grow in every field.
There's no perfect job out there.
No utopian industry, no flawless organizational structure, and no magical product immune to market friction or internal difficulties.
So that green grass is just an illusion.
The perception that the grass is greener over there is an illusion created by the fact that someone else made the fanatical commitment to water it, fertilize it, and pull the weeds.
It's essentially a manifestation of the fundamental attribution error.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, when we fail or feel stagnant in our own jobs, we blame the external environment, right?
Right.
The soil is bad, the market is dry.
Right.
But when we look at someone else's success, we assume their environment must just be naturally better. We completely discount the invisible labor of their commitment.
That is so true. Furthermore, the chapter outlines how this neglect creates a compounding cycle of professional misery.
A vicious cycle.
Exactly. When an individual withholds full commitment, they naturally reduce their effort. Reduced effort inevitably yields poor results.
Makes sense.
And those poor results generate a feeling of failure and dissatisfaction, which the individual then projects onto the job itself. That leads to active disdain for their current role.
And so they look over the fence again.
Right. This disdain prompts them to look at another industry, perpetuating the entire cycle.
That perfectly profiles the psychology of a mediocre worker. I mean, they spend half their workday complaining about lead quality or lamenting the incompetence of their management.
Or researching lateral career moves on company time.
Yeah, exactly. They are operating under this delusion that their lack of success is a symptom of their geography rather than their work ethic.
They believe a new product or a new territory will just magically bypass the requirement for mastery.
So how does the reader break out of that?
The challenge posed is to arrest that cycle immediately. Stop scanning the perimeter. The chapter advocates for a total redirection of focus.
Commit to the current yard.
Right. Commit fanatically to your current product, your current client base, and your current organizational role. The promise is that if you apply the labor of commitment, if you actually start watering your own grass, the yield of your current environment will increase dramatically.
But, making that sudden shift from a passive, wandering mindset into an active, hyper-committed state that rarely happens organically just because we decide it should,
No, you usually need a push.
it usually requires a catalyst. And the chapter introduces this visceral narrative that demonstrates the precise mechanics of forcing this shift.
Yes. The narrative of the Louisiana offshore crew boat. That is a profound case study in manufactured urgency.
So let's establish the context for the listener. The author, in his youth, prior to any professional success, was working a physically demanding job on a crew boat in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, rough work.
Very. And much of the job involved idle time waiting for oil rigs to require their services. So during one of these lulls, the crew began fishing over the side of the boat and unexpectedly caught hundreds of red snappers.
Just a massive haul of fish.
Huge.
Yeah.
And while the rest of the crew viewed this simply as, a free dinner, the author acts on a completely divergent impulse.
This is where it gets interesting.
He uses his own paycheck to buy the entire catch from the rest of the crew, intending to take the fish back to shore and sell them.
But here's the critical variable. He possesses zero knowledge of the seafood market, no established buyer network, no sales experience in this arena.
Nothing.
He just has a truck full of raw inventory.
And he also introduces the most vital element of the entire equation, the melting ice.
Ah, yes, melting ice.
He had packed the snapper in what little ice was available on the boat, but in the oppressive Louisiana heat, that ice was rapidly liquefying.
So the clock is ticking fast.
Exactly. This is the physiological trigger of the story. If the ice melts, the inventory spoils. If the inventory spoils, he loses the entirety of his paycheck.
He inadvertently engineered a scenario where failure carried an immediate, non-negotiable consequence.
A do-or-die situation.
Right. He created a melting platform that demanded absolute manic action.
The neurochemistry of that moment is just fascinating. In a normal job, we operate with this sort of chronic low-grade anxiety where failure means maybe a bad performance review in 6 months.
Right, which is easy to ignore day to day.
Exactly. It's easy for the brain to prioritize energy conservation over action, but the melting ice triggers an acute adrenaline and dopamine response.
It is a literal do-or-die state. The brain no longer has the luxury of evaluating Plan B. Plan B is rot.
So what does he actually do?
Well, the behavioral outcome of that neurochemical state is massive, unhesitating action. The author recognized he had no time to formulate a strategic marketing plan or, print promotional materials.
And just had to go.
Yeah, he reverted to a foundational observation from his childhood. He recalled the relentless door-to-door persistence of Bible salesmen.
Oh, wow. Just brute force sales.
Operating on pure urgency, he drove through local neighborhoods and aggressively approached local businesses, rapidly explaining that these fish were pulled from the Gulf hours ago and were the freshest available.
He just blasted through the social friction.
He had to. He blasted through social friction and rejection because the melting ice made hesitation a mathematical impossibility.
And he sold the entire inventory before the ice disappeared.
Every last fish.
And the realization he comes to there is the core thesis of this section. He didn't succeed because he possessed elite sales techniques. He succeeded because he eliminated every alternative to success.
Right. And he realized he made more capital in a few frantic hours of selling fish than he did in 2 weeks of grueling physical labor on the boat.
That's incredible. So what's the formula we pull from this?
The formula derived from this event is stark. Commitment dictates results, and results dictate happiness.
Commitment equals results equals happiness.
Exactly. And the practical application here goes far beyond just working harder. It requires the deliberate construction of your own melting ice.
We have to build the urgency ourselves.
Yes. We often paralyze ourselves waiting for optimal conditions, waiting for the market to stabilize, waiting for more corporate training, waiting to feel fully prepared.
Which never happens.
Never. This chapter argues that those comfortable conditions are the enemy of greatness. To force a breakthrough, you must strategically place yourself in a position where hesitation costs you dearly.
You have to manufacture an environment that demands unrelenting action.
Precisely.
So, okay, raw manufactured urgency is an incredible ignition system. It gets the engine running.
Absolutely.
But sprinting around a neighborhood with melting fish isn't a sustainable model for a 40-year career. I mean, it's just too chaotic.
Yeah, you'd burn out in a week.
Right. So to transition from a burst of amateur success into sustained greatness, the chapter introduces a much more sophisticated mechanism, the power of prediction.
Yes, because urgency without direction eventually leads to burnout. Prediction is the refinement of that energy.
How does the text define prediction?
The chapter defines prediction quite literally, knowing what is going to happen next before it occurs.
Sounds like a superpower.
It does, but the methodology for acquiring this ability is rigorous. It stems from a state of total egoless observation.
Egoless observation.
Yes. To predict an outcome, you must first assume absolute responsibility for your environment and then begin analyzing your interactions without the interference of emotional defensiveness or blame.
That concept of egoless observation reminds me of how a master jazz musician operates.
Oh, that's a great comparison. How so?
Well, to a novice, a jazz solo looks like pure, spontaneous magic. Just raw creativity happening on the fly.
Right, like you're just making it up.
Exactly. But the reality is that the musician has practiced scales, chord progressions, and harmonic theories so relentlessly that they can predict exactly how a specific note will resolve against a specific chord before they ever touch the key.
They aren't guessing.
No. They are observing the musical structure and executing a known pattern. And the chapter actually applies this same logic to business using elite athletes.
Yes, the athletic comparisons used in the text are Wayne Gretzky and Michael Jordan.
The greats.
The absolute greats. The public often attributes their dominance to an intangible genetic gift or maybe sheer physical superiority.
Sure.
However, the analysis reveals that their true differentiator was predictive processing. Gretzky famously skated to where the puck was going to be, not where it was.
Which isn't magic.
It wasn't magic at all. It was the result of observing thousands of hours of game flow, understanding the geometry of the rink, and reading the subtle biomechanical cues of the other players. He could predict the pattern.
So if we translate that back into a business environment, how does a professional actually build that predictive framework?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. It's easy to say just observe, but what are the actual granular mechanics of doing that in a corporate or sales setting?
The author provides a highly specific, tactical blueprint based on his own career evolution.
Let's hear it.
Once he made the shift to absolute commitment, he transformed into an obsessive student of his own interactions. He began recording his phone calls, both audio and video.
Audio and video.
Yeah. And he would review these recordings with the same clinical detachment that an NFL coaching staff uses when reviewing game tape on a Monday morning.
Brutal.
It is. The purpose was not self-admiration, it was pattern recognition.
I mean, the idea of recording your own calls and watching yourself fail is excruciating. It requires entirely decoupling your ego from the feedback.
You have to be totally objective.
But the tool he used alongside those recordings is, I think, the most actionable takeaway in the chapter, the objections notebook.
Oh, the objections notebook is brilliant in its simplicity.
How does it work?
Every single time a client declined a proposal, offered an excuse, or presented a roadblock, he documented it.
Wrote it down.
Wrote it down. Over time, the data revealed a startling truth. Human behavior in these transactions is highly repetitive.
We aren't as unique as we think.
Not at all. Clients are not infinitely creative in their rejections. They generally rely on the same half-dozen objections: price, timing, authority, and so on.
So by systematically tracking these, he effectively mapped the entire landscape of potential resistance.
Exactly.
Let's actually walk through how someone would utilize this in real time, because this is where the theory becomes a superpower.
Okay, let's do it.
If I'm keeping an objections notebook, I don't just write down, "They said it costs too much," and move on. I categorize it. I write down the exact phrasing the client used.
Right.
Then, outside of the heat of the moment, when I have zero adrenaline in my system, I formulate the absolute perfect, most logical response to that specific objection.
And then what?
I drill that response until it's muscle memory.
Precisely. You are offloading the cognitive requirement of thinking on your feet.
You don't have to invent a response under pressure.
Right. The chapter highlights a pivotal interaction the author had with a multimillionaire executive to demonstrate this.
The 60-second story?
Yes. Because the author had studied the behavioral patterns of highly guarded, time-poor executives, he had already mapped the most likely opening sequence of the conversation.
He knew it was coming.
He didn't just suspect the executive would be abrasive. He predicted the exact nature of the friction. When the executive answered the phone and immediately stated, "I'll give you 60 seconds, son," it wasn't a surprise.
See, an amateur faced with that statement experiences an immediate spike in cortisol.
Panic sets in.
They panic, they abandon their structure, they start talking twice as fast, and they just project desperation.
But the author didn't.
Right, because the author had already encountered, documented, and formulated a response to the time-constraint objection. His nervous system remained completely stable.
He didn't have to invent a response. He just deployed the pattern he had already perfected.
That total control allowed him to navigate the friction and convert a highly difficult prospect into a major account.
The synthesis of this concept is captured in a really powerful maxim from the chapter. To know means you end up with fewer no's. N-O-E-S.
I love that. To know means fewer no's.
The directive for the listener here is to stop treating every professional interaction as a novel, unpredictable event.
Stop winging it.
Stop winging it. Begin treating your career as an empirical study. Document the pushbacks, categorize the failures, and engineer your solutions in a controlled environment.
Because when you map the patterns, you eliminate the panic.
Exactly.
And the elimination of panic brings us to what I think is the most confronting yet liberating psychological insight in this entire analysis.
It really hits hard.
It addresses the fundamental reason why we get frustrated and burn out. It demands that you, the listener, ask yourself a very direct question.
Have you ever felt a profound hatred for your industry, your specific role, or the daily tasks required of you?
Right. And the chapter's diagnosis of that hatred is devoid of any coddling.
It pulls no punches.
It argues that the root cause of professional misery is rarely the job itself. It is incompetence.
Yes. The harsh reality presented is that the only reason you dislike an activity is because you do not fully understand it. And as a direct result of that lack of understanding, you are failing at it.
That is a staggering reframe. We usually assume we are failing because we hate the job, right?
Always.
But the author is arguing the exact inverse. We hate the job because we are failing.
To understand why this happens, we have to look at the psychological drivers of human satisfaction, particularly concepts aligned with self-determination theory.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, humans have a fundamental psychological need for competence and autonomy. We crave control over our environment.
Sure, nobody likes feeling powerless.
Right. So when you operate without a deep understanding of the mechanics of your job, you cannot predict outcomes. When you cannot predict outcomes, you lack control.
And that lack of control leads to failure.
Exactly. This chronic lack of control leads to consistent failure, and the human brain naturally develops an aversion to any environment where it repeatedly experiences the pain of failure.
The analogies provided in the text make this mechanism undeniable. Consider a physician.
A great example.
A doctor who enters the medical field with a genuine desire to heal, but who fails to master the diagnostic mechanics, is going to experience catastrophic outcomes. They will lose patients.
That's devastating.
Right. And the emotional toll of that continuous failure will rapidly metastasize into a hatred for the practice of medicine itself.
Or consider a teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
An educator who loves the concept of shaping young minds but lacks the mechanical skills of classroom management and pedagogical delivery will face daily chaos.
Just constant stress.
They will feel entirely out of control, and inevitably they will grow to despise the act of teaching. They don't hate education, they hate the feeling of incompetence.
This also exposes the flaw in how amateurs attempt to solve their professional misery.
Oh, this is huge.
When an amateur feels their motivation slipping, they usually turn to artificial mood inflation.
Yeah.
They listen to high-energy music, they recite affirmations, they try to forcefully inject enthusiasm into their morning routine.
The toxic positivity approach.
Right. But the chapter explicitly warns against this. Enthusiasm is great, but it's not a replacement for knowing. You cannot use toxic positivity to mask a fundamental lack of mechanical skill.
Enthusiasm without competence is just loud incompetence.
Loud incompetence. That's perfect.
Yeah.
The chapter makes a brilliant distinction about the grades here. A true master doesn't have to consciously try to be enthusiastic.
No, they don't need a hype track.
Enthusiasm is simply the natural biological byproduct of absolute competence.
Right. When a master chess player sits at the board or a master surgeon steps into the OR, they possess a quiet, intense enthusiasm because they have total confidence in their predictive models.
They know exactly how to generate a win, and winning is inherently motivating.
So the actionable takeaway here is a radical shift in how you handle career dissatisfaction.
What should the listener do?
If you are currently miserable in your role, do not immediately seek a geographic cure by updating your resume and looking for a new parking space.
Don't just jump ship.
No. You must objectively consider that your misery is merely a symptom of your amateurism. The solution is not resignation. The solution is education.
Study the mechanics.
You must rigorously study the mechanics of your daily tasks until you transition from a state of chaotic reaction to a state of complete predictive control. Once you understand the mechanics, the success will follow and the hatred will dissipate.
This evolution from chaos to control leads perfectly into the final framework of the chapter, which categorizes the professional landscape into 3 distinct tiers.
Amateurs, professionals, and the greats.
Right. Understanding the parameters of these tiers is essential for accurately auditing your own career.
The definitions are rooted entirely in the concepts of prediction and commitment we've discussed today. Let's start with the amateur.
Okay, what makes an amateur?
The amateur is defined by their reliance on external variables. Their success is dictated by luck, market conditions, or their fleeting mood.
They can't control the outcome.
Exactly. They lack the mechanical understanding to explain why a success occurred, which means they cannot replicate it on demand.
Which brings us to the professional. That represents a significant leap forward.
It does. The chapter defines a professional as an individual who understands the mechanics of their role well enough to predict their outcomes, and by extension, predict their income.
They're reliable.
Yes, they have mastered the baseline requirements, and they are compensated for that reliability. But a professional is not the ceiling.
Right, because above the professional are the greats.
The ultimate tier.
A great is a professional who refuses to stop practicing once they achieve competence. They dedicate themselves to the relentless micro-refinement of their predictive model.
They obsess over the details.
They don't just know the basics. They study the nuances, the exceptions, and the hidden variables until their execution borders on an art form.
But the critical question for the listener is, how do you diagnose which tier you are currently occupying? Because human beings are notoriously terrible at self-assessment.
We always think we're better than we are.
Always. But the chapter offers a foolproof stress test, external economic contraction.
The dip.
Yes, the dip. When the market is flush with capital and conditions are perfect, the line between an amateur and a professional blurs. A rising tide lifts all boats, and amateurs easily mistake environmental luck for personal skill.
But when the economic environment tightens, when credit shrinks, when clients become guarded, when the soil gets difficult, the truth of your tier is violently exposed.
It becomes painfully obvious.
The amateurs immediately default to their core behavior. They blame the external conditions, they complain about the economy, they make excuses, and ultimately their production plummets.
But the greats remain largely unaffected.
Why is that?
Because their predictive models are not reliant on a perfect economy. They understand the underlying mechanics of human behavior and persuasion so deeply that they can generate their own microeconomy.
They pivot.
Right. If the market tightens, they simply adjust their approach, increase their volume, and leverage their mastery of objections to maintain their results.
To ground this in a relatable context, the author shares an anecdote about a sister who operates as a professional cook.
I like this example a lot.
It's so clear. Her professional status isn't merely about holding a title. It is derived from her mastery of the environment. She intimately understands her kitchen, the precise calibration of her appliances, the thermodynamics of her ingredients, and the exact timing required to produce a specific result.
She predicts the outcome with certainty.
Yes. The author notes that if he attempts the exact same recipe, he relies on hope. He creates chaos, takes twice the time, and the result is wildly inconsistent.
He is operating as an amateur, hoping for a favorable outcome, while she is a professional executing a known sequence.
The sports analogies used to solidify this point are also incredibly sharp. Consider a boxer.
Okay, let's look at the boxer.
A fighter might receive a purse simply for stepping into the ring, which technically makes him a professional in the literal sense.
Right, he got paid.
But if he lacks the mechanical mastery of footwork, defensive head movement, and predictive counterpunching, he will suffer continuous knockouts.
The market will correct itself.
Quickly. The market will refuse to pay for his incompetence. and he will be forcefully demoted back to amateur status. A paycheck is not proof of greatness. Sustainable, predictable results are.
The golf analogy further separates the professional from the great. Qualifying for a tournament grants a golfer professional status.
Sure.
But the golfer who elevates to greatness is the one who obsesses over the micromechanics. They don't just hit the ball. They analyze the barometric pressure. They study the specific grain of the grass on the green. They calculate the exact aerodynamic effect of the wind.
The granular details?
Yes, that fanatical commitment to observing and predicting the smallest variables is what creates a dominant champion.
Applying this to your immediate reality requires a moment of total, uncomfortable honesty.
Time to look in the mirror.
Exactly. Look at your current pipeline, your current project load, or your current business metrics. Can you predict your income for the next quarter with mathematical certainty?
A tough question.
Furthermore, can you articulate the exact granular steps required today to increase that income by 20%?
If your answer relies on phrases like hopefully, or if the market holds, or if this one big deal closes, then you are operating under the mechanics of an amateur.
You are relying on hope.
Right. The directive is to abandon the reliance on personality, sheer charm, or hope, and begin the rigorous work of observation and prediction.
If we were to synthesize all the psychological frameworks, all the anecdotes, and the methodologies we've analyzed today into a single cohesive equation, it would be this.
What is the core insight?
Greatness is a mathematical certainty, not a mysterious blessing.
I love that.
It is the inevitable byproduct of combining a fanatical burn-the-ships commitment with the rigorous, emotionless observation of behavioral patterns.
Let's break that down one more time.
When you fully commit, you reclaim the cognitive load previously wasted on exit strategies, allowing you to take massive, unhesitating action.
Yes.
And when you observe without ego, you decode the mechanics of your environment, allowing you to predict outcomes with absolute precision.
Absolute commitment multiplied by accurate prediction equals greatness. That is the architecture of a master.
So, assuming you internalize this, assuming you eliminate your plan B, you build your objections notebook, and you map the mechanics of your industry to the point where you can predict every outcome.
The next step is execution.
How do you actually translate that internal mastery outward? How do you compel another human being to buy into your vision, your product, or your leadership?
That is the ultimate test.
That challenge brings us to the core of the very next chapter in the material, which details the most critical sale you will ever make in your entire life.
And surprisingly, it's a sale that happens before you even open your mouth.
Structurally, it's a sale that must be finalized long before you ever utter a single word to your prospect. But we will have to save the mechanics of that interaction for our next deep dive.
To close out today's analysis, I want to leave you with a diagnostic question to process as you evaluate your own career trajectory.
Something to mull over.
Yes. Isolate the one major professional goal or milestone that has consistently eluded you for the past few years. Analyze your failure objectively.
Without the ego.
Without the ego. Are you truly falling short because the economic conditions are too severe and the market is genuinely impenetrable? Or, if you look closely at your own psychology, are you failing because you are still secretly keeping the engine running, scanning the horizon for another parking space?
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.